Romantic fantasy novel, Beloved Tyrant. And this guy Croft, and he is the main character of the story, who has an attractive face. A young girl, arriving at the estate where she is going to work, addresses a young man and calls him Riviera Blanche. Looking at the guy, the girl does not understand what is the point of a body that looks good. Riviera thought that she would be finished off anyway. The unlucky Prince Croft was exiled by the previous emperor at the age of 7 and spent 17 years on the eastern border of a lawless world. Duke Blanch helped Croft regain the throne after the death of the previous emperor. However, the Duke wanted to become the new emperor's father-in-law, so Croft arrived at his estate a week before the coronation to learn etiquette. However, due to his training, Croft accidentally met the Duke's daughter, Princess Riviera Blanche. But contrary to Duke Blanche's expectations, the mad tyrant Croft destroyed him first. The man would finish her off and put her into eternal sleep just to be with the heroine. A woman reads that the author wants to destroy all empires just so that the two main characters can get together. The girl realizes that just a week ago, she woke up in a novel she had recently read. The young lady, comparing her memories with the surrounding environment, recalls that when the girl was lying in bed, a maid came into her room and worriedly asked if the mistress was awake. The main character realizes that she has become Riviera Blanche, a victim of tyranny. Croft is a man who was destined to become a tyrant, and before he got to the imperial palace, he came to visit the Blanche duchy. Riviera Blanche is the only legitimate daughter of the Blanche family. The girl asks what good is status, beauty, and unrivaled power. While in the room with the prince, the young lady thought that she would soon die anyway, and she was very scared. The prince thought about becoming an emperor. He needs to know imperial etiquette. However, they sent a woman who is afraid even of his. The young man claims that he was not warned that he would be given the Duke's daughter as an etiquette teacher. The young lady, turning to the prince, says that she will do everything in her power to help him. Croft thought that different things had been said about this girl, but she really was extremely elegant. However, the young gentleman thought that the girl needed to be scared so much that she would run away on her own. Riviera looked at the boy and realized that his eyes spoke better than any words. However, the prince insists that she teach him, and if the young lady makes a mistake, she will die. The lady suggests talking about their schedule. However, the prince yawns and does not listen at all to what the teacher is telling him. Riviera asks why now. The girl wonders what's wrong with this guy. However, he can kill her right. The teacher thinks that he probably wasn't taught, that he shouldn't put his feet on the table, and that he should respect others. However, no one cares, because they're going to die at his hand. The main character asks you if he asked her to teach him, since the girl was afraid of dying all week, and she does not understand whether he is a tyrant or just crazy. The teacher made a decision that since she had no longer found a way to change the terrible future, the day should simply be forgotten for everything. The young lady kicked the prince's legs and off the table with all her might. However, the guy looked at her angrily and asked if she had hit him now. The girl calmly replies that it is not proper for the emperor to put his feet on the table. The prince asks the young lady if she is speaking because she believes that he is not worthy of being emperor. The main character replies that if His Majesty is not satisfied with her teaching methods, he can simply ask for another teacher, and she is sure that her father will happily fulfill his request. The young lady thought about what would happen if she disappointed everyone around her and the emperor wanted to abandon her. The prince would ask for a new teacher and leave the estate, and maybe then she would survive. The girl intends to do what she thought because she must try. The prince looks at the teacher and does not understand why she is laughing. Croft thought about the girl's words and decided to say no. Hearing this, the young lady wondered why he was saying that. The prince replies that he wants to see her abilities as an etiquette teacher, and he claims that he does not need another teacher. The worried young lady says that since they have little time, she will teach His Majesty only the most necessary manners and rules of etiquette. The teacher says that there are many tasks and little time, so she asks her to understand that the course of study may be difficult. Croft says he can't promise he'll be an obedient student, but they need to understand each other. Riviera says that while His Highness understands that the border residents are calling him a complete bastard, he should still pull himself together and study hard to change the opinions of those. The prince thought that no matter how smart the princess was, it seemed that she did not understand anything, and he would have to warn the girl. Croft asks the princess if she's stung, She doesn't understand that the value of her life is no different from the value of the life of any other woman in this. The teacher says, turning to the prince, that such jokes leave an unpleasant impression. His Highness replies that he is just joking, because it seems to him that they have had a misunderstanding. The main character asks the question, will it bother me if everyone thinks of Emperor Levin as a man who kills people? The prince jumps up from his chair and sits down next to the princess. He touches her chin and says that they still have to find out whether this is a misunderstanding or. The girl, plucking up her courage, pushes the prince away and slaps him in the face with her hand. The teacher makes comments that His Highness should not touch a woman's body. The young lady was informed that since the welcoming lesson was over, then would he allow His Highness to deviate? As she walked out the door, the main character thought she was crazy. However, she had no reason to be this mad dog, who was destined to become a tyrant. The girl remembers that he came very close to her, and that's why her heart almost jumped out of her chest. Riviera says that she didn't think that the boxing lessons from her past life would be useful to her. Sitting behind the door, the young lady thinks that the prince will not try to stop her. The maid asks the mistress what is wrong with her right hand. The girl replies that it is just a small bruise, and it is nothing to her. The maid thought that the prince was rumored to be a mad border dog, and he might have been able to bite her mistress. However, no matter how beautiful the princess was, the princess thought that if she put in a little more effort, she could win. Sitting in his office, the prince says that the more he thinks about it, the more absurd it seems to him. Croft claims that as soon as Riviere, the Duke's daughter, entered the room, he immediately understood all her motives. However, he would have been an idiot if he had not been able to discern between the lines the desire to arrange their wedding. The prince reasons that the girl is simply incredibly beautiful, and he was planning to get married anyway, and frankly, he wanted to avoid etiquette. Suddenly, a man enters the room and screams, asking if the prince really hit Miss Blanch. The gentleman asks what kind of nonsense he's telling. The man in the white shirt asks you if it is true. However, the captain would never raise his hand to a Prince Jack for Blake to explain. The fair-haired guy says that recently, 2 knights from the estate challenged him to a duel, and during this duel, he learned that the captain attacked Miss Blanch. And of course, unlike Malik, he didn't answer them. Croft holds his hand near his forehead, indicating for them to fall over. Melik, turning to the captain, says that he would never believe these rumors. The captain replies that he was not hers. However, the man in the white shirt says that he knew it because Black asks why this rumor started. The prince claims that the assassination attempt on the princess is a serious accusation, and he could get into trouble, especially since it was she who was the one who was assassinated. A surprised Blake asks if the captain did everything right. The prince claims that he was reproached for not simply touching a woman's body. Hearing this, the man in the white shirt says what kind of trash this is. Malik, leaving the office, turns to the captain and says that he is disappointed. Prince says that everything was wrong and it's a lie, and let Blake go to hell. However, the blonde guy asks the prince what happened. Croft replies that it's nothing special. He just had a row with the princess. Blake, addressing the captain, say that a conflict with Duke Blanch will not play into their hands, and perhaps he will apologize to the princess and not deepen the conflict. Croft, hearing about this, screams that it was she who hit him. The blonde guy asks what he could have done to deserve it. The prince says that the teacher was just scared, but he did nothing of the sort, and he thought that it was worth it. The blonde guy claims that women should be treated with kindness, especially when it comes to Princess Blanche. Ada, however, the prince should not act like he usually does with her. Croft replies that he tries. Black reports that Prince Pasilos is already on his way, and he asks not to speak to Duke Blanche about this until he goes to the palace. Prince Pasilos is the younger brother of the last emperor and Croft's uncle. He seeks the throne in the most shameless way. After the death of the emperor, the crown prince, the first heir to the throne, died of an unknown disease. After this, the nobles were forced to split up, taking either the side of Prince Croft, Archduke Pezolo. However, Croft would have had a hard time if it had not been for the rumor that it was the Grand Duke who had abandoned the crown prince. To avoid being branded a murderer, the latter had to arrange a full because all witnesses know that he never abdicated the throne. Croft thought that he had never been to the palace before, so he needed to be careful. Blake suggests that the prince should first apologize to the princess, saying that it was all due to cultural differences. Croft says for the third time that he was the one who got hit. The fair-haired guy says that even if he did, then he was hurt. However, there is a bruise on the princess's hand, and he suggests that he apologize. Riviera, seeing the prince, greeted him and thought that she was becoming afraid to look into his eyes. Sitting at the table with the prince, the young lady thought that he looked angry, and at this rate she was definitely finished. The girl thought that she shouldn't have hit him. Suddenly, Croft says to forgive him. Hearing this, the princess thought that he had just apologized. The young man says that he is not yet accustomed to her rules and customs. However, he hopes that the girl will be able to understand. The surprised teacher heard this and thought why he was apologizing, since it was she who hit him. Riviera says she doesn't understand what the prince is talking about. However, he has nothing to apologize for. Croft thought that it seemed the girl was not going to involve the Duke in this, and she happily offered to start the meal. The princess, watching His Majesty eat, thinks that he is surprisingly neat, and there is not a single flaw in his table manner. The young lady thinks that if she had to complain, it would only be about the amount of food. The teacher thinks that whoever eats more will be healthier, and this is probably a relic of his country. The young lady waited until the prince had eaten and asked if His Highness was familiar with the art of dance. A surprised Croft replies that he has never danced before. Without thinking much, the prince says that the question is that he is very familiar with the dances and blades performed on the battlefield, and he has never danced differently before, and therefore will make many mistakes. Hearing this, the princess thinks with pleasure that this is very nice. However, she will find fault with everything she can to get the prince to leave her alone. The teacher suggests that they start as early as possible, maybe today. The young boy asks if she heard him. The princess, claiming that when the emperor ascends the throne, he will have to arrange many balls and banquets. In addition, he will have to organize events to meet foreigners. And if they find out that the emperor cannot dance, they will simply laugh at His Majesty. Having told about this, where the girl thought that she should be persistent, the teacher says that, as far as she knows, Croft will have no problems with dancing. After Croft became emperor, many women who wanted to rise in the social hierarchy would approach him. However, after Riviere became empress, nobles wishing to appease the emperor would continue to send their daughters to court, because Lillian, the main character that Croft will fall passionately in love with, will be among them. There was a wonderful scene in the novel where Croft and Lillian dance in the moonlight. The young lady thought that he definitely needed to learn to dance. Since the prince had no other choice, he realized that he would have to dance. The teacher suggests meeting in the great ballroom on the first day at 3 o'clock. His Majesty says that he doesn't really like dancing, and he understands that the princess is unlikely to give up so easily. The gentleman understands that he has no benefit from future confrontations with her, since this is only a deal in which Duke Blanch confronts Prince Pasila. Croft understands that he is giving him this chance in exchange for a place for his daughter as empress. Perhaps, until the post of emperor was so close, the prince did not understand this. But the uncle is still a duke. As much as help from outside is necessary, His Majesty reasons that if he continues to avoid etiquette lessons, the Duke may become suspicious. Croft realizes he only has 1 week left. As if dancing or even flower arranging, he will do whatever it takes, just to adjust to the rhythm of the prince. Malik saw the prince. The captain screamed and asked for forgiveness for calling him trash because he misunderstood. The man in the white shirt suggests that the captain not worry, because Princess Blanche will soon understand how he feels. The prince asks how he feels. Malik says that Blake told him everything. He says that he heard that the captain loved the princess at first sight. The man in the white shirt says it's not surprising since the captain got the brush off, because he shouldn't have tried to kiss her when they first. Blake, justifying himself to the prince, says that he slightly overthought everything. Croft orders the 3 of them to go to the training field. Hearing this, Malik says that it is simply wonderful. The young lady asks Zeroni to find out where he was and what he was doing, because he told her that Croft was practicing fencing. The teacher thought about if he didn't want to come. Why didn't he say so right away? She doesn't understand why he made her wait. While training, the boy suddenly remembered that he had promised the princess to meet her in the Great Hall. Black asks the prince if he has forgotten his promise, and maybe he will be beaten again. Melik says Blake should look because it must be Princess Blanche. Blake says it is not the princess. And the man in the white shirt says he must ask her. Seeing Malik, the young lady thought he was very huge. The man turns to the lady and tells her his name, and says that he is the captain's. Malik claims that he is not a knight, just one of his warriors. The man asks if he can talk to the princess in a normal. Croft saw the smiling girl and thought that she was very kind to him, and he came closer to her. The teacher asks what His Highness is doing here, and who thought at the time that he forgot about his promise and did not come called him a freak. The prince thought that Riviera could do anything in front of his subordinates, and he decides to leave to avoid this. Malik asks the captain why he is leaving so easily. Maybe he is embarrassed. The man in the white shirt thought that something was wrong with the captain, and maybe he said something wrong. The teacher thought that she could not see where the prince went. Suddenly, the girl heard Croft calling her. Coming closer to the girl, the prince thinks that since he has already screwed up, he must accept any punishment, be it her fists or feet. Seeing the guy, the main character decides to leave. However, she is held back by the prince's hand, which At this time, the young man remembered that he cannot touch a woman without permission, and quickly takes his hands away. However, the girl suddenly falls. Looking at her, the prince thought about why she was so easy to knock down. At this time, the teacher thought about whether it was possible to treat other people like that. Feeling guilty, the prince offers the girl his hand to help her stand up. The teacher kicks the boy and screams that she was talking about not touching a woman without permission. However, after some time, the young lady felt pain in her leg. Croft came closer to the girl and took her in his arms. And at this time, the princess asks him what he is doing. The captain suggests that she can hit him later if she wants. But for now, Riviera asks why he can just let her go. The young man put the girl on a chair and took off her shoe. The teacher asks what he is doing and tells him to stop touching her immediately. The prince touched the toe and said, "Fortunately, it looks like the bone is not broken, and it looks like a simple bruise," and offers the girl to apply something cold. Croft warns her to avoid such blows. However, if she wants to hurt him, then it would be better to scratch or bite him. Rivera says she thought he was just nuts, but he's also a pervert. The young man offers to carry the girl to her room and asks if she minds. The young man takes the teacher in his arms and tells her that it would be better for her not to walk alone for a while. Having entered the room with the girl, the prince orders the servant to pour very cold water into the basin. Croft takes off the young lady's shoe, and at that moment, the maid sees it and then screams that the prince cannot do that. The maid says that even if he were 100 times the future emperor, he still cannot behave so impudently with their mistress. And no matter what the duke says, she is ready to give her life to protect their mistress. Hearing this, the prince was very surprised and thought that she had of course said that one should not touch her carelessly, but he did not expect this. However, he took his hands away from the girl and said that before using cold water, she should take off her socks. The lady, turning to Zerona, says that she has hurt her toe and asks if she could bring her some cold. The maid asks what happened, and the young lady thinks that she cannot tell her that she kicked the future emperor. Riviera replies that it just happened that way. Hearing this, the maid says that the rumors were true, that he is a terrible person. Keeping her feet in the cold water, the main character thought about how weak she was because she dislocated her finger by lightly kicking the prince. The young lady says that Croft is not her only problem, but she must find a way to survive in this world. After some time, Croft entered the princess's room and offered to talk. The captain asks the girl if her leg is feeling better. The main character replies that she is better, but in His Highness, she thinks that recovery will take some time, and teaching dancing will not be so easy anymore. The gentleman replies that it is not so important for him to learn to dance. Riviera says that teaching him etiquette is becoming problematic, and he should think about another person. Croft says he thinks they should talk about it already. He asks the princess if she doesn't want to teach him etiquette. Hearing about this, the excited lady says that her father appointed her as the prince's teacher only so that they could start a relationship. The young man claims that he knows everything about it. Hearing this, the main character is very surprised. Croft says that he will gladly accept her as the empress, and if she does not want to be his teacher, then she should just say so. The guy says that even if she does not do this, they will still have a wedding. The prince says that if the girl is not sure of him, then they can hold the engagement ceremony before he ascends the throne. In the book, Croft chose Riviere as his empress, but even after the wedding, their relationship remained cold. And Croft got rid of her immediately after meeting Lillian, so she thought he would be against this marriage. However, the prince has no reason to refuse the wedding, especially since it is unlikely that he will meet the love of his life so soon. Croft claims that in this situation, refusing to learn etiquette will not help him. The princess tells the boy that she can teach him any manners he wants. The young lady says that she does not want to, and the prince asks her about her not wanting to marry him and asks what the reason is. Riviera thinks that she doesn't want to die because of him, but she can't tell him. The prince thought that the young lady already liked someone. He suggests that she remain his etiquette teacher until he ascends the throne with the help of the duke and takes control of the imperial palace. Croft thinks that after this, he will no longer care who her father is and what he is. The young lady thinks that he is pretending to treat her as an empress in order to gain the trust of Duke Blanch. When he becomes emperor, he will immediately eliminate the duke. The main character understands that this was the meaning of the words he said to her, and this is a good start to becoming a tyrant. The princess asks that after this he will be able to send her wherever she wants. The man confirms. Hearing this, the young lady says that it is her duty to teach him etiquette. Croft says he doesn't really want to, but eventually agrees. The prince says that it is time to go eat, and he suggests that the girl should not strain her leg until the swelling goes down. The young man picks up the girl to carry her to the dining room. The young lady, turning to him, says that before touching a woman, and the prince continues the conversation, saying that he knows that he needs to ask. Riviera thinks that she needs to do something with her body, so that she has the ability to escape in case of danger. The girl thought that she needed to be independent. Arriving in the hall, the prince saw Duke Blanch. The duke asks how he is enjoying etiquette lessons with his daughter. He looks at them and says that it looks like they have become closer. The prince says that the lessons are going well and he has already learned a lot. The duke reports that the girl, although young, is already capable of providing His Highness with worthy assistance. The prince agrees with him and says that he has. The young man asks what news there is from Prince Pesalos. The duke replies that he, as expected, mentioned Prince Eisen. Prince Eisen, the only surviving prince besides Croft, will die at his hands. It is because of this that he will be called a tyrant. In the end, Prince Pesalos, who led Eisen to his death, will lead Lillian, his niece, straight into Croft's hand. The main character is head over heels in love with his former enemy. However, if the main character hadn't killed so many people along the way, maybe he would have succeeded. Duke Pesalos will demand that His Highness confront Prince Eisen. Upon ascending to the throne, the prince must resolve this situation as soon as possible. However, it seems that the events from the original novel will be repeated in the future. Although they made a deal, if this crazy dog in the role of the emperor breaks loose, then what will be the point of it? The girl asks. In the end, Duke Blanch will be the main character thinks about what will happen to her. She decides to prevent these events. She needs to prevent Croft from falling in love with Lillian. The young lady reflects on the fact that she has an excellent backup plan, which she brilliantly outlined. Looking at the guy, the main character thinks that his eyes are slightly ferocious, and this is his charm. And every time she looks at him, he seems unapproachable. The main character read the novella, spent most of her time screaming, advising Lillian to run away from him. However, becoming one of the secondary heroines of the story, the young lady understood why Lillian loved Croft so much. Sometimes the idea that cruel and serious men are a great choice simply washes away. The main character didn't read the book for that long, but since it's a romantic novella, everyone probably had a happy ending. And if everything is done correctly, there will be a good ending. The girl thinks that everything is as in the original, only she needs to make sure that Lillian is not scared, and then Croft will not go crazy missing her when she runs away. However, if they are together immediately, how much bloodshed can be avoided? The main character thinks about whether she will be able to change the course of history. The young lady looks at the prince and thinks that she will help him change and let him leave it to her. Riviera suggests to His Highness that after a meal with a woman he likes, she should be invited for tea or for a walk. The prince asks if this is etiquette. Hearing this, the young lady thinks what a nightmare this is, and how could he even get off with Lillian? The young lady offers to explain, since it is part of etiquette. The girl claims that if he is interested in someone, then it is best to invite her for a walk or arrange some other leisure activity after eating. The young man agrees and replies that the lady's leg hurts, so a walk won't work, and suggests going for a ride together. Riviera objects because she can walk. The prince claims that if she overdoes it, her leg will continue to hurt. The main character asks if His Highness will continue to wear it. The prince replies that he doesn't care because it's not heavy. Croft thought that she was a strange woman, and also stubborn as hell. Since she didn't like to accept help, however, that was also a cultural character. The main character reflects on the fact that there is even more misunderstanding from the future emperor. The prince really thought that everything would work itself out. But unlike this, Riviere grabbed his hand and immediately let go as she fell to the floor. And then she hurt her finger kicking him. Croft thought that the girl had a very unusual body, and if she continued to walk around with a dislocation at this rate, she would develop a fracture. Without thinking twice, the young man took the young lady in his arms and said that he thought it would be better this way. At this time, the main character thinks that she asked the prince not to touch her without permission. At that time, the lady understood why Lillian was afraid. Riviera warns His Majesty that she will hit him on the forehead with her head. The prince says that her forehead may break and that she should be careful. Croft says if she's angry, he suggests she pull his hair instead. The teacher orders His Highness to repeat after her and orders him to speak correctly. The prince, repeating after the young lady, asks if she could forgive him. The girl says that he is doing great, but only the prince must say it first. The young lady asks that the boy stop groping people. However, once her leg heals, he won't have to worry about it anymore. The teacher says it's just a small sprain and should heal in 3 days. The prince says he thinks it will take about 3 months. Hearing this, the young lady asks if he is making fun of her. His Highness replies that he is quite serious, because a sprain cannot heal in 3 days. The prince tells her not to be so sure of this, because he judges from experience. Croft thinks it's time for him to have some fun. The young man says it's incredible, because she's still alive with such a body. The girl agrees with him and says she's surprised too. His Majesty reports that the girl has a straight posture and moves quickly. He says if she strengthens her body and learns a few tricks, she will become much better. Croft says that in an attack, it is not so much the strength that is important, but the ability to distribute it correctly. It is necessary to hit the enemy's vulnerable points to cause significant damage. However, if you simply attack with all your might, you will only— The guy claims that the skills of power distribution come from strengthening the muscles. The surprised girl asks what an attack is. His Majesty replies that, and since, for example, what she recently tried to do. However, it is not easy to take a person by surprise in such a position. The young man says that since her bones can be so easily damaged by a strong blow, he suggests being a palm, for example, The main character claims that the slap is unlikely to hurt. The prince asks if it is worse than harming oneself. The girl, addressing His Highness, asks if maybe he should simply not commit acts worthy of such. Croft replies that he would be happy not to, but she knows he is still learning. However, her blows do not hurt at all. The prince thinks that it is more like the flight and landing of a butterfly. The main character says that in order to be his equal, she will have to become much stronger. The prince asks if she wants him to teach her. The young lady does not understand the question, and Croft explains to her that while she will teach him etiquette, he will teach the girl the art of battle. Upon hearing this, the main character says that there is no need for this, and the prince objects and says that they do not agree with her here. Riviera discusses the prince's offer to teach him how to be right. The guy replies that he needs to do good deeds. The young lady claimed that she would do it better herself. Croft asks if it will be difficult for the princess to train alone. She thinks that he does not want to train and will just do exercises. Although with such a body, even that will not be easy. And if she suddenly decides to run away, the Duke will be furious. In the novel, the prince was described as a god of fencing, and the girl is not sure, but she thinks that he is an expert in handling the ball. And even more so, this will remove the suspicion that she is planning something with Croft. The princess says that she wishes him luck in this. The prince replies that he sincerely wishes the same for her. The prince the girl thought was a terrible tyrant turned out to be not so bad. Following her lessons after breakfast, he understood how to properly invite someone to tea. After all, this is why education is so important. The young lady says that the main feature of tea is its deep aroma, and suggests drinking it more slowly, savoring. Croft replies that it is too bitter and tasteless, and asks how anyone can drink it. Hearing about this, the girl thinks that her maid brewed such tea on purpose. The main character tells Zeroni to bring tea leaves and teaware for it, since black tea is used for tea drinking. The princess herself made tea for the gentleman and offers him to try it. Enjoying tea, the prince says it is very tasty. The young lady says she is very glad because the prince thinks that he should also do something nice for the girl. His Majesty asks the young lady if she would like to practice with the sword. The main character thought that it was impolite to take out a sword in the middle of tea drinking. Croft says that sword training is the best way to strengthen your upper body, and if she starts swinging it back and forth right away, she'll probably break her arm. He suggests being careful. The girl objects that she won't break her arm swinging a simple sword. The prince orders the princess to hold her hand and sword straight and let her slowly raise and lower it. The guy suggests that she lightly touch the tip of the sword to the ground and then raise it to the sky. However, the young lady is unable to do anything because the sword is heavy and it is incomprehensible to her. Croft encourages the girl and tells her to try again. He suggests that she start lifting the sword from ground level, and the slower she does it, the better her muscles will develop. However, the young lady fails, and the prince asks if she is really using all her power. He claims that if the girl tenses her stomach, it will be easier for her to use it. The main character says that she is doing everything she can. Tired princess asks what kind of sword it is and why it is so heavy. His Majesty replies that the sword is slightly heavier than ordinary blades. However, it is not so heavy that However, the prince agrees with the girl and says that he will prepare a wooden sword for her. The gentleman informs that his colleague will arrive today and let the princess not worry about it, and a ticket for the girl to tell the maids not to approach the annex. The main character asks him if the prince wants to say that he has such a bad character that he can harm her people. His Majesty replies that his character is not entirely bad, but she is quite capable. The teacher says that she doesn't like the idea of a person coming to them who could cause discomfort to her servants, and then she remembers what the prince said about a woman. The gentleman says that this is not a man. The young lady says that this girl and she has no idea what unpleasant things she can do. However, she says that after her there will be only scorched earth. The princess asks who this guest is. The gentleman replies that this woman is the red bird Kinsel, and she is a famous magician of the East. The young lady remembers that there was a red bird, Kinsel, in the part of the novel. Blake, turning to the guy in the white shirt, says that it's all his fault and asks why he woke her up and invited her here, since the woman had been sleeping peacefully for a year. The magician Kinsel is a witch of the East, and the Black Catastrophe says about her that she is crazy. Seeing the prince, she greets him and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Croft tells her not to even think about causing problems here. The prince suggests that they first discuss whether she should be here at all. The mage asks when she ever caused problems. However, Kinsel agrees that she would never want to spend the night in such an estate. The master, His Majesty, leads the magician into Riviera's room and introduces them. Kinsel says to the girl that it is a great honor for her to meet her. The magician looks at the princess and says that Malik was not lying. Croft says that this is the woman who will marry him and become the empress. The witch turns to the leader and says that this is too much, since such beauty should be enjoyed together, and he is going to appropriate it only for himself. The princess does not understand what the guest is talking about. Croft tells Kinsel that he has already made a decision to get married. The woman reassures him and says that she is not against it since she just arrived. The main character does not understand what is happening. However, their conversation resembles a chaotic exchange of phrases. The prince asks the woman if she will soon leave this place. The witch replies that no, because she likes it here. The guy claims that she said that she does not want to stay here. His Majesty thought that at least I would tire her out easily, and there shouldn't be any problems with. The prince pushes the woman out of the office, and seeing this, the main character asks where they are going, and she thinks that they have something to talk about. Croft sits down opposite the princess and claims that they have nothing to talk about, and he sees that the girl is ready. The main character, hearing this, says that she will decide depending on the situation. Hearing this, the prince asks what's. The young lady replies that this is a situation where it turns out that His Highness makes and breaks his own promise on the same day. Croft turns to the princess and says that this is just a misunderstanding, and the girl replies that she is giving him the opportunity to eliminate all misunderstandings by explaining. The prince thinks about how to explain this to her, because being Kinsel's love interest is like being a walking sacrifice. However, this is not the best development. His Highness says it's hard to explain in detail, but it seems Kinsel has fallen in love with her. The boy claims he was forced to say he would marry her after hearing about it. The witch would retreat. The prince says he was simply acting in advance. However, suddenly, the main character asks His Highness if he likes her. The girl thought that after all the beatings from her, he had something. And these could be. The young lady thinks that she wants to give her place to Lillian and get out of there as soon as possible. Riviera says that she hopes that His Highness will keep his promise. Seeing the woman, the man in the white shirt screams, and she tells him that he is too noisy. Malik asks, if she met the princess, and hearing this, the witch became very angry and angrily says that he has not yet learned to shut up when necessary. However, she can tear out his tongue. Hearing this, Melik screams that it is not necessary. Melik asks again if the princess is beautiful. Kinsel replies that she will wipe this entire empire off the face of the earth if even one tear falls from her eye. Near the door to the palace, Blake meets the witch, and the woman suggests that he get out of the way if he doesn't want to ruin her mood. The guy asks if she's going to sleep. The witch says he should leave her alone or she'll send him back to the east. Blake says he doesn't think this magic circle can send him to the eastern castle. The knight asks the woman if she really intends to stay here and offers to take her to the imperial palace. Kinsel claims that she has no reason to go anywhere since the leader and the princess, who will become the empress, are here. Hearing this, Blake asks if that is what the princess said. The woman says that the captain said that he would marry the princess and make her his empress. Hearing this, the knight says with pleasure that they finally made. The witch asks about the captain treating the princess badly. The excited knight says that these are just rumors, and he says that the captain said that it was his princess who hit him, and if he said so, then it is true. The woman says he should have told her this from the beginning because he almost made her kill the captain. Kissel is told that she needs to rest, and Blake asks how long she will sleep this time. The witch says that she was awakened and forced to use magic, and that is why she is tired. The woman suggests locking Malik away somewhere for 3 days, or else she will kill him. When the witch closed the door, the knight thought that everything would be calm for now. The main character met with her friends. The ladies ask Princess Riviere who the man who will become the emperor is. And is he as scary as the rumor? The lady with brown hair asks that people from the east are cruel, and His Highness is the same. The main character, I thought about the fact that it was the Archduke who decided to spread such rumors. She needs to refute everything while people are talking about it, because she will not allow Croft's reputation to be tarnished. This is the only way she can survive. The princess claims that His Highness is very calm and very careful, and yet remains strong. The main character says that the prince is simply unfamiliar with their etiquette, but this is temporary, since he is extremely attentive and kind. The lady with the brown hair says that she is sure that teaching such a wonderful person is a real pleasure. The main character heard about this and thought that this was exactly what should reach Lillian's ears. Riviera says they had a good time today and thanks her friends for coming. The lady happily says that they would be glad to continue coming to her. Suddenly, the prince appeared, and the main character asks him if he is going to the train. The young lady thinks that everything will be fine because she has prepared everything for him. Looking at the girl, the prince thought that, judging by her look, if he did something wrong, he would be beaten again. Riviera looks at the prince with excitement and thinks that he should now demonstrate good manners. Croft approaches the princess and asks for forgiveness for his impudence and says that her leg has not yet healed and offered to carry it. Seeing this, the friends were very surprised, and the lady too. Arriving in the room, the prince announces that he has brought a wooden sword and placed it near the girl. The main character, taking the sword, says that she doesn't really think about it now, that if she points the sword in his direction, she will commit treason, and then she smiles and offers to take it. Rivera asks, what does this mean during training, and why should she train if she is not going to fight? The girl asks what she can do with such a The prince claims that he wants to teach her how to fight. The young lady thinks that after her leg heals, she will simply start training calmly. Suddenly, she saw the prince very close and thought about why he was approaching her and whether he wanted her to hit him on the head or kiss him. However, the girl did not want either. Croft says the girl is very agile and he thinks she just needs to improve her strength and stamina. The main character grabs the prince by the hair and he apologizes and asks her to calm down. The young lady speaks up to His Highness and claims that not everything can be fixed with an apology. The prince says that he just wanted to test her reaction and had no intention of. Croft apologizes again, as he thought it would be a good test of reaction. Riviera turns away from the prince and tells him that this is a bad thing to do. Croft asks about hair pulling not being considered cheating. The young lady says that, given how His Highness treated her, however, the girl does not think so. The gentleman says that at first he thought the princess was much tougher than she looked, but now he realizes that she has a sweet side. The guy claims that it will be difficult to train with an injured leg. Since Kinsel is here, let Rivera ask her for help. The main character says that since they now have a new guest, she would like to arrange a dinner for his subordinates. The master asks if this is necessary. The young lady says that, given that they will be dating in the future, she thinks that getting to know each other better over dinner would be a good idea. The gentleman claims that they will meet in 3 days and then he will think about it. Since Kinsel will sleep for 3 days, Croft says that the witch can sleep peacefully for 3 months. The surprised young lady says that in 3 days, her leg will be completely healed. The prince says they have a lot of work to do until then. The princess's help in reading the complicated documents sent by Duke Blanch is especially pleasant, and she explains everything much better than it is written there. A beautiful voice, pleasant pronunciation, and a calm tone that suits. Even stories about complex power conflicts are not so incomprehensible when told by Riviera. The prince thinks that if she were a simple beauty, it wouldn't be the same. His Majesty asks why a story from 300 years ago is so interesting. The young lady says that the events of the future are just a reflection of the past, and there is nothing wrong with knowing a little history. The prince claims that the princess has naive conclusions, because history was written by liars who distorted everything according to their whim. The emperor is always described as incredible in history books, and his dirty personal life is never written about. Having overthrown the empress, he killed her and sent their little son to the eastern border to certain death. And in the books of emperors, the main character thought that if you look at it from this side, then she even feels sorry for Croft. The princess says that not everyone believes this lie and suggests going to eat. Sir Gillian came to Lady Riviere screaming and said that this was a challenge to their entire duchy, and he could not allow the dishonorable death of his subordinate to pass without a trace. The man says that he wants to challenge this crazy witch to a duel and asks the lady to give him the right to do so. The princess says she understands his feelings, but this girl is His Highness's subordinate. However, there is no need to act rashly, at least until they know what really happened. Sir Gillian heard this and said that a crazy woman had crept into the bedroom and put him into eternal sleep because he couldn't even defend himself because he had no weapon. The man claims that he knows absolutely everything that is needed. The young lady thought that the crazy woman was Kinsel. This story happened 3 days after the witch settled here. At first it was quiet, and the young lady does not know why. The knight says that when they learned of what had happened, Kinsel had already disappeared and only Hamilton's body remained. The princess, claiming that they must wait as she had no intention of starting a conflict with the emperor without reason. However, if he did do something reckless, he should be prepared to remove the crest of their family from his armor. The man claims that Hamilton was finished off. The young lady says that she understands everything, but she is not asking him to forget about it. The girl says that she is only asking for a little time. Coming to the prince, the main character asks him if he is going to finish off the commander of the guard. His Highness replies that if he wants to fight his subordinate, then he does not mind. However, the prince claims that he can fight. Croft asks the princess if she thinks he might lose. The young lady replies that even if that were possible, her father would strangle the commander him. The princess asks if the witch has escaped. Croft says she is too crazy to escape for fear of punishment. His Highness and the princess came to Kinsel's room. The woman asks the princess what happened to her leg. The young lady replies that she just dislocated her toe. Kinsel says that she hopes that from now on, they will become a little closer to each other. The princess stops holding on to the master and thanking him. The young lady turns to the witch and asks why she killed Lord Hamilton. The woman replies that she did everything she could. The princess asks if he was rude to her. Kinsel says that if he had done something to her, he would still be walking on his own 2 feet. However, even though she is a princess, she cannot tell her all the truth, because one little bird did not want her to blab. Croft says he doesn't think taking out one of the local guards would be bad for them. However, he would even say it would be to their advantage. The princess turns to the woman and says that she has the right to know why one of her family's defenders was killed. The main character claims that if his death was unjust, then she will have to punish the criminal. A surprised Kinsel asks the young lady if he was someone important to her and why she is so worried. The main character says that she did not know him personally, but he had served in her family for a long time. Kinsel says if the princess is responsible for such things, then in the future she will ask her permission to finish off Duke Blanch. The woman says that she will gladly accept a duel from that captain of the guard, and asks if she can finish him off. The princess heard this and said no. Suddenly, a maid knocks on the door and asks for forgiveness, because someone wants to talk to them. Seeing the worried maid, the princess asks her if she has anything to say. Kinsel approaches the maid and tells her that she doesn't have to talk about it. The princess asks her name, and the maid tells her name is Barry. The main character suggests that Barry not worry and say whatever she wants. The maid reports that the sorceress was simply trying to save her. The story she was told turned out to be a common one. It is a rare case of a knight being killed for trying to defile a servant. After hearing all this, the princess turns to Zeroni and says that this girl is now her maid and let her teach her everything she needs to know. The young lady orders to tell Sir Gillian to come into her office. When Gillian came into the office, the princess said that, as soon as he takes out the blade, he will be immediately excluded from the Order of Knights of the Blanch. The man cries out that this witch killed the lord. The princess says that Hamilton will also be posthumously stripped of his title of Knight of Blanch. Hearing this, the man cries out that it is not enough for the lord to die dishonorably, or else he will be posthumously stripped of his title. He claims that this is unacceptable. Riviera warns Sir that if he continues to defend the man who has defiled the name of Duke Blanch, then measures will also be taken against him. The surprised man asks what the lord did. However, it is not a mortal sin. Hearing this, the princess replies that this is not the case, and the man, in a rage, says that this is also not the case of this witch. Sir Hamilton announces that he is the leader, and he must avenge the unjust death of the lord. The man turns to the witch and challenges her to a duel. The sorceress agrees and accepts his challenge. However, the prince intervenes and says that he will fight in her place. Croft claims that Kinsel has already killed one of the duke's knights, and now he will kill the commander as well. However, when Blanche's duchy needs to be protected, he cannot allow him to be killed. The sorceress asks why he will fight, since it was she who received the challenge. The master answers that in the future she will return this debt, but the princess thought that it was wrong to spread the rumor that he was challenged to a duel by a subordinate of the family that supported him. The young lady was informed that in such a case, the commander of the guards had. The main character, addressing His Highness, says that, being Duchess Blanche, she will fight him in this duel. Everyone who heard this was very surprised. The surprised Duke asks why her. The princess replies that since the Order of Knights is under the jurisdiction of the duchy, she is in charge and asks if she is right. The young lady says that in any case, let him make sure that the knights will not spread this information in the future. Since the duel will take place tomorrow, the man objects, but the princess tells him to stop and leave. The prince tells the sorceress to go away from here too, and let her return to the annex and sit there quietly. Hearing this, Kinsel agrees and says that they will see each other tomorrow. Left alone, the princess asks His Highness if he is going to kill her. Hearing this, the young man asks. The young lady replies that she is serious and does not have the heart to joke with her life. The prince reassures her and says that he does not. Rivera claims that she also has no intention of finishing him off, which means everything is fine. Before the duel, Blake tells the captain that he should never wear the princess, and the master replies that he knows about it. The knight suggests that he just swing his sword a couple of times and finish the duel. The prince says if he tries to knock the sword out of her hands, someone might break her arm. The gentleman suggests bringing wooden swords. Seeing these swords, the young lady says that she definitely won't fight with a piece of wood, and the prince asks if she's going to fight with her bare hands. His Majesty asks the girl if she is going to use a real sword. The princess replies, because this is a duel, and the prince asks to move a lighter. In this duel, the winner receives all rights to truth and honor, and the loser is obliged to fulfill the loser's demands. After these words, the knight offers to begin and raise his sword to the princess. The young lady, raising the sword, says that she has done it. However, the girl can no longer lift the sword because the prince is pressing on it. The master says that, according to the rules of the duel, this is how it should be done. The princess began to swing her sword, and suddenly the prince's sword flew away for some reason. Riviera herself does not understand how, but she wounded the prince. His Majesty says that he is lost and asks the good-natured princess not to take his life, and at the same time asks what she is waiting for and let her announce that the Sir Gillian asks what kind of duel this is. However, he says that the duel is officially declared over. Kinsel comes closer to the girl and asks if the princess is okay. The worried young lady says that she has hurt him. The sorceress smiles and says that this is good. The surprised princess asks what is. The woman says that such a wound needs only to be treated and bandaged, and nothing else can be done. The main character thought that if something goes wrong, she might die without even getting to the palace. The worried princess turns to His Majesty and asks if he is okay. The gentleman replies that she was told that it is too early to simply wrap up. Riviera takes the prince by the hand and invites him to go for treatment. The sorceress says that the princess is much more decisive than she seems. Blake agrees with the woman and says that it was not for nothing that she stole the captain's heart. However, this is funny because it is a very unexpected development. The main character thinks about what to do if simple wound treatment does not help here, and whether stitches are needed. The girl thinks about what will happen if the wound gets worse, if he dies from infection or something else. However, she will be killed at the same time. The prince, turning to the girl, says that she is taking off his clothes right now. Hearing about this, the princess says that she did not want this, and seeing the wound, the young lady says that he needs treatment because he is bleeding. The prince says that he will undress him. Having seen the entire wound, the girl says that this bruise is serious. The prince says that she speaks as if she is upset about it. Riviera asks if this is possible. The lord replies that anyone would think so. The main character says that she wouldn't be worried if she knew he had such a strong body. The prince survived countless attacks and became an emperor despite everything. To survive such wounds only because he wanted to live so much. His Majesty, turning to the girl, says that she is now groping him. The worried girl did not even notice this and asked for forgiveness for her action. The gentleman says that he will be generous and forgive her, because he now understands why she said to ask permission before touching. After changing his shirt, the prince leaned over to the girl and kissed her. After the kiss, the surprised lady asked what it was. The gentleman replied that he simply felt he had to do it, since it was not a mistake and she started it first. The princess says that it was His Highness who started it. However, it was actually rude. Croft agrees with the girl and asks her to. The gentleman says that she is the first person who has ever looked at his scars like that, and that is why he kissed her. The young lady thought about hitting him. The main character thought that everything would be fine if she didn't have that look. However, she doesn't feel anything special for Croft, because she just felt sorry for him, and that's all. Riviera suggests that it is time for him to think about the problems in his personal life. The prince replies that his personal life has been a problem from the start, and let her remember that even his father wanted to kill him. The princess, screaming, says that she is not talking about that. Surprised, Croft asks the girl if kissing is forbidden in society. The young lady replies that it is not the case, since he should not kiss anyone without permission. His Majesty asks if she wants to tell him that there will be no problem if she gives him her permission to kiss. The prince says that his skills have improved, but he is the type of person who learns by doing. Hearing this, the young lady replies that she thinks she should have punched him in the face. Croft replies that if she did that, she would break a couple of her fingers. The main character says that with such actions, he will never be able to win the heart of a woman, and they will rather hate him and try to run away. His Majesty looked at the young lady and realized that he had done wrong, and therefore asked the girl for forgiveness. Riviera calms the prince and says that everything is fine and suggests that he not do it again. Croft asks the princess what she asks for. The prince explains that she won the duel and showed generosity by sparing his life, and now she has the right to demand anything. The surprised girl asks the prince if he accepts defeat. His Majesty replies that it does not matter what she thinks about it, since she has won, and let her say what she wants. The main character says that she wants to be expelled from the imperial palace in the future. She asks if he can draw up a contract certified by a magician. The surprised Croft says that she does not trust him. The young lady says that they are not that close. However, the prince turns to the lady and says that Riviera explains to the prince that she is quite cautious. His Majesty says that he will find a magician who can verify. Riviera thought that it was hard to understand him, because the prince was so ruthless that he was capable of any action. However, when you look at it that way, everything starts to make sense. The main character reflects on the fact that the only thing that can be said about the prince is that he has a beautiful face and a great body. However, she does not understand what the point of this beauty is if he will never have it, and she does not want to watch him kiss others later. Suddenly, a maid knocked on the master's office, and then, opening the door, she screamed and said that His Highness did not notice that the young lady had gotten into huge trouble and he was pretending not to notice it. The surprised prince asks what the trouble is. The maid answers that the duke is scolding the princess for the duel, and he has been scolding the lady for an hour now because he wants to throw her out of her home. Hearing this, the prince quickly went out to save his mistress. However, he stopped in front of the door and heard screams. Mr. Blanch claims that he asked the princess to take care of His Highness, and she arranged a duel. He says that she does not even imagine how much effort he puts in for her. Croft heard about this, opened the door, and greeted the duke. Together with the history of Vera, she will become her empress, and so there is no need to punish her so. The duke justifies himself and says that he did not try to scold the princess because he simply expressed some of his thoughts. He turns to the girl and suggests that she rest because tomorrow there will be much. The young lady leaves and turns to His Highness and says that she needs to talk to him about Count Tesla. Croft is arguing that today this boredom will end because it has been a week since he arrived in the capital to ascend to the throne. However, only a week remains until the coronation ceremony. His Highness thinks that he will soon return to where he was driven out 17 years ago. The imperial palace of the Leuven's empire turned out to be much larger and more majestic than she had imagined when she read the novel. It took the whole morning to explore this huge and luxurious palace. However, despite the fact that he returned here after 17 years, Croft acts as confidently as if he had lived here all his life, and he exudes the aura of the owner of this place. However, the princess noticed that all the evil looks were directed at the owner, because in their eyes there was a slight fear and contempt, and also an extremely unintentional attitude. Since the prince has not yet done anything to deserve hatred, the main character is concerned about why they treat the emperor like that. And if the emperor was treated like that by his servants, there was no need to imagine the reaction of the other nobles. The young lady thought that Croft was not so bad as to treat him like that. Seeing the lady's plan, His Majesty asks the princess if she liked the food. The girl replies that everything is very tasty. The prince suggests that she eat a little more. Following noble etiquette, it is not customary to offer one's food to others. The young lady thought about the fact that she had not said anything against. The main character asks the servant how he can laugh at the emperor in such a situation, and judging by his laughter, it seems something funny happened. The worried servant replies that he was not laughing. The young lady asks what was so funny and suggests that he tell her, and they laughed. The servant says it doesn't matter. The princess says if he can't stand still, she thinks he doesn't belong here. Croft orders that this man be thrown out of the palace. Hearing this, the servant turns to His Highness and says that he made a mistake and asks for forgiveness. The prince turns to the young lady and says that since he is no longer here, she can relax. The main character reflects on the fact that on her first day in the palace, she kicked out a servant for disrespecting Croft. However, she cannot believe that she did it. Lying in bed, Riviera reflects on how she planned to keep quiet and quickly seal the deal with Croft with the help of the mage, give her place to Lillian, and run off into the sunset. The princess cannot fall asleep for a long time because she thinks that everything went wrong. Croft can't sleep either and thinks that, as expected, the current palace is a huge trap. Since Blake, Mielik, Chest, and Kinsel are with him, and yet they are significantly out. Servants and nobles bow to His Majesty on their way to the throne, but the emperor still thinks that guards and potential enemies are hiding everywhere. The prince is sure that Duke Pasilos has already planted his people His Majesty is also aware of the disrespectful attitude of the servants, since everyone here looks at him as an uninvited guest, and he cannot help but notice. Croft thinks that this is exactly what he expected, but he still feels bad, and remembering the day from his childhood, he thinks that nothing has changed in so many years. And while the prince was thinking about a solution to the problem, Riviera herself suggested it to him. They just need to get rid of their enemies and keep people who can be his allies as close to themselves as possible. The next day, Riviera, seeing the emperor, asks if he slept well. His Majesty understands that the lady is a necessary ally, and looking at the girl, feels that he lacks something, and it may be her thin. The worried prince thinks that it doesn't matter whether she kicks him or rips his head off, but he thinks that she will be very angry. Looking at the charming main character, the guy smiled and thought that he doesn't want to make her angry. Riviera thought that this was the first time she had seen him smile, and it was probably because he was home. However, she felt sorry because he had no one to share this joy with. Croft asks the princess if she liked today's food. The girl replies that it was delicious and thought that it was good that they changed the chef. The prince was informed that he would like to take a walk to the banquet hall and asked if she would join him. Heiner's Hall is the grand banquet hall of the imperial palace. It is there that Croft's coronation will be celebrated in 6 days. However, it is there that the prince will meet Lillian, the main character of the original. The hall, of course, was described as a magnificent place, and looking at it, the girl realized that this was not too much. However, the original story will begin in just a few days, and the main character hasn't even lived a month in this book. The young lady thinks that she still feels strange here, but if she doesn't want to die, she can't act strangely. Croft was mean to Lillian on the day of the coronation, but it was love at first sight. In this story, the male protagonist is an incomprehensible and cruel tyrant, and at the same time, Lillian is an extremely inaccessible and secretive lady. Riviera understands why Lillian did not immediately open up to Croft given their first meeting. She could simply be afraid of the prince. The main character thinks about how to bring them together without the difficulties she experienced in the book. She needs to work hard on Croft. Looking at the princess, His Majesty asks if she wants to say something ahead. The lady replies that she doesn't want to say anything. Suddenly, the main character sees a black veil and asks if this is the veil that was used at the funeral of the previous emperor. The maid replies that it was prepared especially for the coronation ceremony. The princess asks whose idea it was. The maid replies that Princess Belinda did it. The main character asks if she means Countess Travitt, and why she chose the decorations for the ceremony. The maid replies that no one else has the right to decide such matters. The emperor and the crown prince were dead. For a month, the empire was without an elected emperor. Before Croft was chosen, someone had to manage the life of the palace. However, that person was Belinda, the younger sister of Duke Pasilos. Pesilos pretends not to care about the throne, but in reality, he is secretly gathering power and influence to conquer it. He even sent his younger sister, who became a nun 20 years ago, to seize the palace. Because this black cloth is a congratulation to the nephew who returned after 17, the main character orders this thing to be taken down immediately, since she will choose new decorations herself and orders the manager to be brought. Croft looked at the servants and reported that they did what the princess said. The prince says, well, to be honest, he doesn't care about the decorations. The young lady, hearing this, objects, because they are preparing for a beautiful event, not someone's death, and asks how he cannot care. The prince replies that it doesn't matter whether it's a white or black rag, since it won't change the fact that he is an emperor. However, considering that Croft has been fighting for his life for a long time, he really might not care. The characters in the book can take care of themselves, and the girl just needs to save her life. The main character reflects on the fact that she now knows Croft personally. Because he may be weird, but he's clearly not the crazy bastard he's described as in the novel, and the girl just doesn't want him to be treated so unfairly. The princess claims that she cares, and the surprised prince asks why. The young lady replies that they are trying to show that he is not welcome here. Hearing about this, the main character does not understand His Majesty is either very angry or laughs at her words. The prince, turning to Riviere, says that she can be his as much as she wants, but he will still kiss her. After the kiss, The surprised girl pushes the prince away from you and says that this is not possible. The gentleman asks if she is okay, and the young lady answers that his chin is made of steel. The main character asks why he suddenly decided to kiss her. The prince doesn't think long and answers that she said she felt sorry for him. The gentleman says that the girl feels sympathy for him. Hearing this, Riviera tells him not to dare say that she is the first person to feel sympathy for him. The princess suggests going somewhere else first, as she would like to drink something refreshing. His Majesty says there is a small garden outside. Croft looks at the girl with pleasure and asks if her leg hurts, because he can carry her. The princess assures him that he does not need to do that. Sitting in a beautiful garden, the prince looks at the girl and thinks about why he wanted to kiss her. However, he still feels the same desire. His Majesty thinks that it may be curiosity or impulse. However, this impulse disappears as soon as someone shows reluctance. The Lord ponders why this woman. In the East, people exploit others without any mercy. The prince recalls that when he was exiled there, he was focused only on survival. In an effort to survive, Croft made enemies and acquired comrades who could cover his back. Vindic's mercenaries all joined forces to take revenge. Although they supported each other, these people united to achieve their own goals and needs, because even though there is a special relationship between these four, they do not feel any sympathy for each other. Mutual comradely work is far from sympathy. However, sympathy is so rare and valuable. This cheap feeling, which people so easily talk about, is known to all residents of the East. The willingness to extend a helping hand to another, even if it. The prince looks at the young lady and says that he got it for the first time because of her. Because she deserves to be. However, as Riviere claims, the kiss belongs to a slightly different category. And even frowning, the young lady remains a real beauty. Croft thinks that the problem is in these lips, because they give him bad intentions during the day. The princess tells His Highness that if she had to kiss all those for whom she feels pity, then by that logic, she would kiss a street cat, since the same applies to poor starving children and wounded soldiers. Hearing this, the prince says that he understands and suggests that she stop because he doesn't even want to imagine it. The lady asks what lesson he learned from this. Croft replies that she has a big heart capable of sympathizing with anyone and that she does not want to kiss him. Hearing this, the main character says that it is good because he understood everything. The prince claims that sympathy may not be that important to her, but it is a special thing for him. However, the gentleman still wants to kiss her, so let the lady tell him what. The main character tells the gentleman that such words sound rather offensive, because kisses should happen between people who really love each other. Croft says that this cannot be, and instead of her talking about love, he suggests coming up with a way. Hearing this, Riviera thinks that this is the man who slaughtered the people of the Empire because of love. Young lady, addressing His Highness, ask him if he thinks that love does not exist, because he simply does not need to meet a person whom he will love and make her his empress. The prince says that there is no such thing as love, and it is just an illusion, misunderstanding, or deception. Hearing this, the young lady thinks that he is too confident, despite the fact that he has not yet met the main character. The lady insists that he shouldn't say that. She still believes in love, and she doesn't want to kiss someone she doesn't feel the same way about, and she suggests that he not say that anymore. Croft says because she doesn't want him to do anything, and in that case, she will continue to feel sympathy for him. The girl claims that she will, until someone appears who will pity him more than she does. The prince heard and said that it suits him and offers the girl. The gentleman remembers that in his childhood, the woman told him that he should not hate the emperor because he did so because he loved his mother very much. However, when he is already an adult, he understands that this is complete nonsense. Seeing Riviera, the maid asks what happened to her forehead again, as it is swollen and red. Zeroni was an extra character who wasn't even mentioned in the original. She probably died at the same time as Riviere Blanch. The young lady muses that she wasn't interested in her before, so she never even thought about it. The maid offers to examine her forehead carefully and ask if it hurts. Lady, you understand that now she sees and talks to her every day. However, Zeroni is not just one of the additional characters. Anna is a valuable person who. Riviera asks the maid if she will move for a while. Zeroni sits down and thinks that the mistress does not usually do this. And maybe the young lady reports that her forehead must have turned red because she hit His Highness's chin. And when His Highness first came to the duchy, her hand turned red because she hit the prince in the face. However, when she kicked him in the leg, she dislocated her toe. The maid, hearing all this, was very surprised, and the princess asks her if she was very worried. Zeroni replies that she was, of course, worried, but what is more important must be that she hit him for his bad behavior. Riviera claims that the maid knows her very well. She wants to assure her that there is no reason to worry. The lady says that she is looking. The maid says that since she already knows everything, she won't worry about her. While sitting at the table, the lady turns to His Highness and tells him that he should learn to dance. The prince replies that he does not want. Riviera thought that he would have to dance with the main character because dancing is obligatory. She claims that the prince asked her to teach him etiquette because dancing is a basic skill among no. Croft thinks that the teacher continues to pester him with lessons because in the imperial palace, there is already a lot of work to do, and he still needs to grab the lady and spin around. The prince thought that he could cover the Riviera and be closer to her, and suggested that she start studying in 2 hours. The main character suggests calling musicians. When the guy heard about it, he thought that because of them, he wouldn't be able to touch her lips. Arriving at the hall, the prince asks if he is late. The young lady replies that he arrived just in time, and the musicians began to play. The main character tells His Highness that when he invites a lady to dance, one must bow one's head and ask her permission. However, there are no specific phrases for the invitation. Croft does everything as the teacher showed him and asks her if she would not refuse him the honor of dancing with him. The mistress agrees to dance with him and says that he knows perfectly well what to do. Croft kisses the lady's hand and then bites it. The surprised girl slaps the prince and insists that it is wrong to bite. The lady is worried and asks why he did this and was not satisfied at dinner. Riviera thinks that she was joking and does not understand why there is no answer. She does not understand whether such a situation was in the novel, but in any case, it is a love story, and in it, everything should be different. The prince, at the moment he touched her lips, seemed to him that they exuded a sweet aroma. Soft and smooth fingers, slightly colder than lips. The aroma that made his head spin, and the prince had a strange desire to swallow her. In the end, he bit this tender. Croft says he won't eat her and asks who she thinks he is. Riviera suggests continuing to learn dancing. She gives him her right hand and tells him to hold it, and he can put his left hand around her waist. His Highness thought that the princess's waist was so thin that she didn't even know what to hold on to. The lady suggested taking the simplest steps, right and back, left and forward. The princess asks if it's difficult for him and suggests not to worry. Even if he steps on her foot, the girl will still forgive him. The gentleman thinks that if he steps on this little foot, it will break without a doubt. He claims that he will be careful and will not step on the foot. The lady says that she will only be glad if the prince tries and suggests As he dances, the prince smells her scent and thinks that he is hugging a bouquet of flowers. The lady reports that the first song is over and His Highness is learning quickly. The teacher says that after the music is over, you can bow and shows how. Croft suggests taking a short break, and the teacher agrees. The gentleman thinks that the first thing he did after arriving at the palace was dance. His Majesty, seeing his friends from the east, asks what they are doing here. The guys claim that the captain dances very well, and maybe it is because he has a special teacher. The prince says that they have little work, and so they are idle. Blake says that they came to make a report and were waiting for the captain because they did not want. The blonde guy reports that Cassell has found out everything and asks if he should tell her to catch him and bring him back. Croft says don't touch it yet because you need to find evidence first. The teacher, seeing the captain and his friends, asks if they have any important things to do and if they will finish today. The guy says that they will continue. The lady claims that he has things to do, so that's enough for today. The prince offers to take Riviere. Walking down the corridor, the princess says that his subordinates follow him unconditionally. The master says that this is not so at all. The teacher says that she felt that they were very close, and Malik especially obviously likes him. The prince says that all the mercenaries who call him captain have gathered together for The princess understands that these people have their own reasons. The master says that Malik joined the mercenaries to avenge his father. His Highness reports that he has finished off Malik's father. The boy, in order to become stronger than him and take revenge, joined his squad. The young lady asks why he keeps a man under his command who is going to kill him. However, as a close person, with whom he meets face to face on a daily basis, the princess does not understand what kind of life one must live to have such a relationship. Coming to Riviere's room, the gentleman offers the girl a good rest. The young lady thinks that since he is a tyrant, life in danger has become a common thing for him. However, she has never even thought about the reason for his tyranny. The princess only wants to get assurance from the magician and raise Croft as best she can. She wants to replenish her strength and safely leave the imperial. The days fly by so quickly. Even though the prince has far from a wonderful character, the young lady wants to continue to take care of him. The next day, Rivera looked at herself in the mirror and saw a bruise, and she thought about how Croft's body was made of steel. However, she needed to ask Zeroni to apply ointment to the maid, having smeared ointment on her forehead, asks if it hurts. The mistress replies that everything is fine and asks if it can be hidden. Zeroni claims that cosmetics will not be enough. The head maid comes into the ladies' room and informs that Princess Belinda has arrived to see her mistress. Riviera says that she is not feeling well today and therefore cannot receive guests. She asks to tell the guests that the princess will invite. The maid claims that Princess Belinda is the late emperor's younger sister. She is a member of the imperial family, and by law, they cannot throw her out. Riviera says that simply coming and asking for a meeting is a breach of etiquette. As she tries to turn a blind eye to the princess's rude behavior, the maid lectures her on etiquette. The head maid claims that imperial law is above aristocratic etiquette. Hearing this, Rivera wonders if she means that the young lady should not spoil the relationship with the person she will have to treat as an aunt in the future. However, in reality, the young lady does not intend to remain the empress. Riviera claims that she is staying here only as a guest invited by His Highness, and the princess has no reason to insist on meeting her. The main character claims that the maid has no right to teach her. The maid informs the young lady not to say, Princess Belinda is His Highness's only aunt. If she becomes her enemy, it will not be more difficult for His Highness to ascend. Hearing about this, Riviera thought that she did not want to create an extra headache for herself and agreed to go. Arriving in the Countess's room, the young lady apologizes for keeping her waiting. Seeing the girl, the woman smiles and says that she is glad to meet her. However, despite her rudeness, the Countess came here to tell the princess something. Rivera asks if everything is all right with Madame, and says that she heard that the Countess has urgent business and offers to talk about it. Countess Travitt introduces the princess to Emily and says that she is the daughter of a family with whom she has good relations. The woman introduces the princess to the girl Lillian from Viscounty Ilmenda. The Countess reports that they have come together to meet the princess. She claims that these elegant figures would be ideal as her assistants. Auntie says that she heard that Riviere came to the palace without a lady-in-waiting. However, as the eldest member of the imperial family, she could not ignore this fact, and so she brought these ladies to become her ladies-in-waiting. The princess reflects on the fact that she did not ask, however, the Countess invited candidates for maids of honor from among her acquaintances. Since among the emperor's concubines, there were many maids of honor of the empress's servants. Belinda must be striving for exact. Riviera thinks that she could simply refuse, but Lillian is here, and if the prince meets her sooner, he will fall in love sooner. Because in this situation, the young lady understands that she should be glad that everything is going well. However, she begins to feel resistance. The main character reports that she already has an assistant. The Duchess claims that a maid of an aristocratic family and a lady-in-waiting of the imperial palace are completely different. However, she also needs a wise lady-in-waiting, and Emily is better than anyone else in the imperial palace because the Countess personally taught her. And the same goes for the Archduke's. Riviera claims that she will only be staying here for a short time at the invitation of His Highness, and therefore does not require much assistance. The woman says even if she returns to the duchy, these ladies would be good to right here. The Countess asks the princess not to refuse her favor. The young lady thinks it is difficult to refuse, and suggests in such a case to accept the help of one of them, since she is not sure whether it is possible to invite two guests without His Highness's permission. Riviera turns to Liliane Ilmenda and asks if she can help her in the future. The Countess claims that this girl will be a good assistant to the princess. The main character, looking at the girl, says that she is glad to meet them. Riviera reflects that in many ways the peace of this world and her life are in Lillian's hands. Left alone in the room, the young lady reassures herself that everything will be fine. She thinks about how to arrange everything so that everything will work out well for Croft and Lillian. The maid informs the lady that the prince has come. Entering the room, His Highness asks the girl if she is angry with him. She thought that he is a tyrant who is always angry. The prince says he thought something was wrong because the girl didn't come to breakfast. The young lady replies that she usually skips the morning meal. However, the gentleman thought they would eat together. Riviera asks him if he doesn't like eating alone, and the prince replies that he is tired of eating alone. The main character thought that there were more than 50 people in the guild, and there was not a single one who would share a meal with him. The young lady says she is not angry or sick, and it is just a bruise that appeared on her forehead. Croft sees this and apologizes. The lady says that she was afraid that he would say exactly that, and that is why she avoided him. Since it is her fault, and the prince has nothing to apologize for. Croft says that if anyone sees it, they will think it was their fault. Riviera says it makes no difference, because she knows it is not the master's fault. His Majesty suggests that they begin the training they have been putting off for so long. He tells her that if she is going to be his, she should use her fists and feet, not her forehead. Riviera tells her that she warned her not to do anything that could get her into trouble. The prince says he will try. And since the problem is solved, he suggests they go get something to eat. The young lady thought that in order for the prince not to eat alone, he needed to find a friend, and it would be best to introduce Lillian to him. However, the first impression is important. The princess says that recently, the Countess of Tyrant came and introduced her to a girl who could become a maid of honor. The gentleman replies that he heard about it. Croft thought that the old fox had decided to introduce a rat to them, and the reason why she wanted to introduce the spy to Riviere was the main character says that this girl is beautiful and kind, and it seems that she has a bright soul. The lady thinks that if the prince meets her, he will definitely like her. Hearing this, the gentleman replies that this is still unknown. The lady suggests a personal meeting. Riviera understands that now His Majesty is dissatisfied, but when he meets Lillian, everything will be different. However, she is the fatal partner with whom he is destined to be according to the original story. If he does not meet earlier than expected, then peace in the empire. Suddenly, Melik enters the room and says that Kinsel is wounded. Hearing this, the princess asks Croft how she could have been wounded. The sorceress does not say who wounded her, but it seems that the knights know who did it. There are not many people on the entire continent who can hurt Kinsel, and so only one mage, Marmot, comes to mind, who must one day die at her. Blake asks the captain what happened to the sorceress, because he can't find her, because she disappeared. The knight says that it's obvious that Kinsel went to that scoundrel. The captain asks Blake where all the guild members are now. The knight replies that they said they would reach the imperial palace today and must be waiting in the building. The duke tells him to take the boys with him, as he too will soon follow them. Blake asks the captain about his coronation ceremony. Croft claims that if the sorceress went after the boy, then their priority is to help her get revenge. Suddenly, the maid informs the master and the knights that Kinsel is in Riviere's room at this time. Upon hearing this, His Majesty quickly entering Riviere's room, the prince asks what they are doing there. The sorceress replies that she was comforting her mental pain with the princess. Croft says that if Kinsel is going somewhere, he should warn you. The young lady asks His Highness why he is acting so well-fed who suffered. However, now the sorceress needs. The surprised prince asks Kinsel if she is so ill that she cannot use healing magic. The magician replies that if the captain is talking about the shoulder, then she has already healed everything. The prince tells her to get lost. Hearing this, the sorceress says that her mental wound has not yet healed. However, Chester takes Kinsel on his shoulders and carries her out of the room. The sorceress screams and says if he does not want to regret, then let her go. And if the knight does not do this, then she will finish him off. Rivera asks if Kinsel is okay, since there was a lot of blood. Croft says if it's a body wound, then it's okay. He thought if something else was hurt, then that would be a— The prince asks the young lady if she likes Kinsel. The girl replies that she is worried about her. At this time, His Highness says that there is no need to worry because she has healing. The main character says that if the wound has healed, it does not mean that the pain has gone away. Croft asks if she and the sorceress have such a close relationship. Riviera replies that it makes no difference. However, she can't help but worry about the man who was injured and came to her for— Croft thinks that the lady is worried about the people who came running to her with injuries, and he claims that he understands everything. The young lady does not understand what the prince is thinking and what he is trying to convince himself of. Kinsel turns to Chester and says that today she will spare him, and thanks to the princess, she is in a good mood. Chester suggests that the sorceress make a magic circle to move to the location of this villain, and he will finish him off. Kinsel asks if he thinks that the magician Marmot is still there. However, if Chester goes alone, the magician will definitely finish him off. The sorceress says not to talk nonsense and suggests that it would be better. The mage Marmot is the son of her mentor, a childhood friend and family member. However, the one who cast a spell on the sorceress's body that will never allow— From that day on, when Kinsel was betrayed and nearly killed by a man she trusted, there is only one reason for her to live. The sorceress claims that she must take revenge on the mage Marmot. Arriving in the room to Kinsel, the captain and his knights claim that it is impossible not to say that she does not know. The sorceress responds, turning to the captain, that he is selfish, because you want to enjoy the Princess Riviere alone. Croft asks her if Kinsel was going to do something to the princess. The sorceress replies that she only asked the young lady to pat her on the head. The prince, turning to the sorceress, tells her to make a report. Kinsel claims she was unable to obtain evidence, and it appears these guys were aware of what she was looking for. The sorceress went north to find information about Viscount Sheldon, who was involved in the death of her mother Letitia. Empress Letizia was dethroned on charges of treason with Viscount Sheldon. As a result, the Viscount and all of her mother's close associates, the Viscounty of Sheldon and the earldom, were divided between 3 neighboring families. Oddly enough, the men who reported Letitia's betrayal were the heads of the— Because to overthrow the beloved empress, one of 2 things is needed: either strong evidence or a strong ally. However, at that moment, they had no evidence, and Viscount Sheldon denied his relationship with the empress, despite the brutal torture. Croft reflects that without proof, uncovering the truth was difficult and took time. It all ended when Guilfred's faith and affection for the empress gradually faded. There is no need for further proof if the emperor does not have faith. That is how his mother died, and the prince thinks that if there is no proof, then an ally is needed. The conspirators who were able to slander his mother received a decent reward for this. Croft was investigating the case of 3 families who could receive compensation for the conspiracy when they encountered Marmot. The sorceress reported that the evidence was destroyed, and the captain agrees with her. Kinsel states that it looks like Marmot has become the dog of the Grand Duchy of Pasilos. When Croft survived in the East and began investigating his mother's affairs, he found that all the evidence was linked to the Grand Duke Penzilos. However, the problem is that evidence is hard to find because the Grand Duke hid the truth. Blake asks the captain what they will do now. Croft replies that it does not matter because the emperor can kill the empress with false evidence, and he asks if they think that some Grand Duke cannot be dealt. Croft says he was curious about why he wanted to get rid of his mother. The prince wanted to prove that the accusations against her were false. However, he does not see how this matters now, since there are 5 days left until the coronation. The prince will become emperor and lead Duke Pasilos to the most terrible death. Riviere asks the prince if Kinsel is okay. Croft replies that she will sleep for a while because she needs to restore the energy she spent. However, she couldn't sleep, so she pestered you to stroke her head. The young lady says that it was not difficult for her at all, because Kinsel's hair is beautiful and she enjoyed stroking it. Hearing this, Croft bent his head towards the girl and said that his hair was black light. Hey, let her stroke it as much. The surprised lady at first could not understand why she was doing this. However, after stroking her hair, They both thought that it was quite good. Croft thinks with pleasure that it would be better if the princess petted him all day long. The young lady claims to His Highness that she does not understand what this situation is at all. The prince replies that they will train in martial. Croft explains that a person's weakness is usually in the center of the body. He points to the crown of the head, forehead and nose, chin, neck, and the solar plexus. They'll learn the rest little by little. The gentleman claims that the most effective way to start is from the solar plexus. Riviera thought that this man was serious. The prince points to his chest and asks what to do. The lady replies that she should. At this point, Croft asks if he will dodge by putting his left foot back. The princess replies that she can follow him and hit him with her left hand. The prince asks what if he dodges to the right this time. The girl says that she needs to grab him. Croft suggests that the girl just try to do what he said. When they started fighting, the guy kept dodging, and Rivera couldn't hit him and thought that this was annoying. Suddenly, the prince grabs the girl and wonders if he should hug her right now. The lady punches the prince in the chest with all her might and happily says Croft pretended to be in pain, and the worried girl asked if he was okay. After catching his breath a little, the guy asked if her hand was okay. The princess replies that her hand is fine, but she is worried and asks how he feels. The gentleman says that everything is fine, and he thinks that she is worried about him. Croft says he's in pain and looks at him. Rivera thinks his expression doesn't match his words. The girl apologizes, and the guy suggests she not ask for forgiveness. The Duke, who has taken advantage of this situation, embraces the girl and thinks that he cannot kiss her. Riviera asks His Highness how she can resist such a situation. The prince suggests pushing her aside, and she says she can't. Then he advises her to step on her foot or hit her between the legs, but then he realized that Croft asks for forgiveness. The girl says that she has forgiven him. However, she asks why he did it and if she is the first person to pet him. The princess says, turning to His Highness, that despite the circumstances, one should not hug so tightly. The Duke says that for this he asked forgiveness. Croft suggests sitting down first. The young lady, addressing His Highness, says that if he immediately proceeds to action after such words, he may be misunderstood. However, she did not give him her consent to act. The Duke tells her to answer now, because he wants to hug the girl and asks if he can do it. Riviera replies that it is impossible, and the surprised prince asks. The young lady says that she wants to ask him a question about why the prince wants this. Croft says she smells nice, and he likes her soft hands. He likes the way she looks at him. He likes her voice calling him. The prince says he likes. When the princess heard this, she thought, what nonsense he had just said. However, in a couple of days, when Lillian moves into the palace, a spark of love should fly between her and Croft. The main character reflects on the fact that during all this time of their acquaintance, she only beat him a few times, and she is interested in the question of where the prince got. However, if you think about it, she felt sorry for him a couple of times, because there is a reason. The young lady does not understand what she needs to do. The princess turns to His Ego Highness, but he, without letting me say a word, suggests that I remain silent. Riviera thinks that this is the first time the prince has said something like this to anyone, and she doesn't understand why he did it. The young lady tells him that she likes him too, but of course not in a romantic way, and asks if his feelings for her are the same. The princess was informed that he would definitely meet his soulmate and life partner, who would give him a lot of love. Hearing these words, Croft was a little surprised, and the lady asked if he understood her. In the morning, when the maid was doing her makeup, the princess noticed that something was wrong with her and asked what was wrong. Zeroni answered that Lady Ilmenda would be arriving here in a couple of days, and the worried maid said that she could no longer help the princess do her makeup. Tomorrow, the main heroine of this world, the tyrant's companion, the pitiful and unfortunate Lillian, will finally come to the palace. The princess is thinking that it would be better if she came today, considering the nonsense that Croft is talking, who has not yet seen the love of his life. Riviera imagines the prince embracing Lillian and telling her that these feelings mean nothing to him anymore, and that it is time for her to leave the palace. Zeroni asks the lady if she can leave the right to choose her outfits to her. The princess takes the maid by the hand and says that without her, she would not be able to do anything, until Zeroni herself decides to leave, and until then she will remain her main assistant, because these are not empty words. However, in her cute little head, there is no useful information that would help in everyday affairs. The maid says with pleasure that she will not envy or interfere with Lady Ilmenda. However, she does not need anything just to be near the prince. The princess said that this lady would come to the palace because she and the prince were destined to fall in love. However, she had no intention of making her maid. Hearing this, Zironi is surprised and asks why there is a second lady in the courtyard to play the role of the bride if the princess has already been declared the future empress. The maid asks if this is possible and says that the mistress must have been very upset about this, and she had no idea. Riviera suggests not to worry about it, as much as she does not want to take a place next to the future emperor, and asks the question who told the maids that she was announced. Zironi replies that people are saying that after the prince's coronation, her wedding with him will also take place. Hearing this, the main character wonders if everyone around her thinks that she will become an empress and does not understand how she can bring Croft together with Lillian. Riviera tells Zironi that she does not want to be the empress. However, she likes the idea of His Highness and Lady Ilmenda having a relationship, as she blesses them with all her heart. The princess suggests that the maid not believe the rumors that she will be. Zironi says that the prince is who he is, but she still thinks his feelings for the princess are real. The maid says that she will root for her success and that she should not be. Riviera, hearing this, thought that if this was true, then it would only make things. The palace of the Imperial Palace, in which all 300 knights of the Imperial Guard are. Since yesterday, Vindict's mercenaries arrived in full force. However, there are probably some of Duke Pasilos's rats in the Imperial Guard. Therefore, it is necessary to weed them out of the main army and replace them with reliable mercenaries. In general, the prince's gang checked the background of all the soldiers. 22 of them were linked to Panzilos, and it is possible that he was planning to use them to stage a coup d'état. The knights say among themselves that the princess has turned down the captain. Blake says that apparently Lady Riviere does not like a man like the captain. Malik claims that the princess is beautiful, elegant, and refined, and their commander is far from her. Chester says that people can hear and suggests thinking about what they are talking about. Looking at the couple who arrived, Malik thought about what the captain was counting on with such a beautiful lady. The knight informs His Highness that the guards are awaiting orders. He also greeted Lady Riviere and kissed. Seeing this, Croft tells Blake to get rid of this knight. The guy says that he is not on the list of traitors, but the captain claims that he would do it. Malik was appointed the new captain of the Imperial Guard. 50 of Vindict's mercenaries were enlisted into the ranks of the Guard, and the previous ones were dismissed to maintain the previous number of soldiers. And those who were associated with Duke Panzilos were also removed. When the Imperial Palace gets a new owner, the ruler's inner circle changes as well, because there must be people close to him in the Croft Palace. Croft turns to the princess and kisses her hand. The surprised girl asks why he suddenly did this. The prince answers that the guy did this. Riviera asks if he is talking about the captain of the guard. His Highness says that he is already a former captain of the guard. The young lady explains that it is simply a form of greeting that means the person is glad to meet her. Croft says that he is glad to see her every moment of his life. The prince asks the lady worriedly if she was close friends with him to be so happy to meet him. Riviera answers that it is just part of etiquette and asks if she did not teach him. Croft claims that the more he learns about the rules of conduct, the more useless they seem to him. Lady suggests that he does not have to follow them if he does not. Suddenly, Malik tells the captain that the guys want to meet the princess. Riviera, having given her name, reports that His Highness said that they are reliable people and she welcomes them into the guard. Malik asks what the captain will order him to do. Croft answers that nothing needs to be done until his coronation. However, if they are bored, they can have a party. The main character thought that such informal communication between the captain and the knights could become a problem in the future. The young lady turns to Malik and says that since he has become the captain of the Imperial Guard, he needs to address the prince differently because such communication between the future ruler and the commander of the guard could seriously damage Croft's reputation. Rivera suggests that it would be better if he addressed the prince as Your Highness in public and Your Majesty after the coronation. Hearing this, Melik agreed with the princess. The next day, news of Croft's reorganization of the guard spread among the high society. Pesilos say that he was curious how this idiot from the east would take control of the empire, and rumors have spread among the aristocrats that Princess Blanche is rejecting the prince's advances. However, she is predicted to become empress. The aristocrats talk about the fact that the duke's daughter Blanche is a refined lady who may not please the man from the east. Some aristocrats made barbs at the prince. Others thought about the future. Everyone was wondering if they could tie themselves to the emperor through their daughters. Secretly, everyone hoped that their daughter would steal the emperor's heart. Duke Blanch, talking to his daughter, says that after her mother's death, he devoted all his time and energy to her. He promised to do everything to make her the best, so he even refused to remarry. The father asks his daughter how she dares to do this to him after all this. The main character thought that he raised her for money, but he would never admit it. Riviera turns to her father and says that she does not understand what he wants to say. The Duke asks his daughter to explain where these rumors came. Blanche claims that his daughter has decided to ignore the prince because he is considered a barbarian from the east. He asks if his daughter has decided to break up the marriage. The young lady asks why he says such a thing, because the prince is a wonderful man. The girl thought about whether she ignores him or not, because her life is at stake. Riviera thought that maybe people don't know him well, but the prince certainly does not deserve to be ignored. The main character asks who dared to call the barbarian from the east a prince. However, she just heard her father dare to say something rude about the man who will become the emperor of Leuven. The aristocrats despised, and at the same time rejoiced at the emperor, who was completely unsuitable for this role. Because the ruler of the head of state had such a difficult past, high society laughed at his ignorance of the basics of the Soviet way of life. The aristocrats hoped to take advantage of his stupidity and seize power. Those who sided with Croft also wanted to get their way by manipulating the new. Among them, Duke Blanch was the most prominent and the one who took the most risks, and his ambition surpassed that of any nobleman. Blanche, turning to her daughter, says that he understands her and thinks that he should not meet with the prince because he may have been mistaken about him. The father tells his daughter that he will solve everything and suggests that the main character does not understand in what sense he will decide this, and thinks that he can. The servant informs the prince that Duke Blanche has asked him for an audience. The prince invites him and thinks that the duke has helped him, but he talks too much. The count reports that the Marquis of Deforden has given his consent. It was for this reason that Blanche had put so much effort into convincing him. Marquis Deforden is a man who was exiled from the empire because he expressed his opposition to the overthrow of Empress Letitia until the very end. And since then, this man has lived in the forest in. The prince, addressing the duke, says that he understands how much he does for him. Blanche addresses His Highness with all due respect, but he would like to hear something more specific. Croft asks if he is talking about the reward because he understands that he has worked hard, and he himself thinks about how impudent this is. The Duke apologizes and asks how long the prince intends to keep his daughter in limbo. Blanche claims that his daughter is in love with His Highness, and he cannot simply watch his darling suffer because of unrequited feelings. The Duke of Blanche says that His Highness should make his daughter his empress. The prince reflects that before Riviere entered the palace, they made a secret deal. When the prince agreed to these conditions, he believed that the Duchess would never want to marry him. He didn't even think that the princess would begin to have feelings for him. Duke Blanche says that if the prince is not going to marry his daughter, then he is not prepared to support him any longer. And of course, he should not expect support from the Marquis of Deforden. Having heard all this, Croft says that he will talk to Riviere. However, the Duke insists that it is time to prepare for the wedding ceremony. The prince replies that he needs to know her opinion since he cannot force the lady to marry him. Blanche, surprised, asks what the prince is talking about, since his daughter is head over heels in love with him. Croft says he understands and suggests that he leave. The Duke thought that he would have to be tough now, and he would arrange this marriage no matter what it cost. After this conversation, the prince thinks that the Duke clearly misunderstood something. After all, this simply cannot be true, although he would very much like to. The prince reflects that Riviere will never change her mind, since he called the magician a few days ago to seal that deal. The Duke has an idea and wonders if she will sympathize with him. The princess thinks about what her father said to Croft during the meeting. However, her father left extremely dissatisfied, and the girl thinks that However, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by the prince who came to her. Riviera asks His Highness what is the matter, and he replies that it concerns Duke Blanch. The young lady asks what he told him. Croft says that if he doesn't marry her, he'll lose all support. Hearing this, the main character thinks that her daddy has gone completely crazy. The young lady thinks that Croft must be a tyrant, but now he looks like a puppy abandoned in the rain. However, the fact may be that he is a prince without real influence who has not even had a coronation ceremony. On his way to the throne, Croft was supported by about 50 mercenaries who came with him from the east and later became part of the Imperial Guard. This includes the young Prince Eisen, who has secured the support of influential relatives on his mother's side, and Duke Pesilos, who has concentrated power in his hands, making it difficult for Croft to compete with him. However, the prince now looks not like a wild mad dog, but like a puppy that could be thrown out on the street again. The main character thinks that she does not want to get married, but wants to leave this palace as soon as possible. But at the same time, she is disgusted by the thought that Croft will be deprived of everything he came to with such difficulty. The prince thinks that he is now between two fires, and even if he is left without support, and again finds himself outside the palace walls, he can simply lead the Eastern Army and seize power. Croft thinks that maybe it would be more honest. But then he won't get Riviere, and he won't get the revenge he wanted. The guy thinks that he needs a prince. His Majesty turns to the girl and says that the Duke said that Riviere is crazy about him, although she claimed that she hates him. The princess says that her father never listens to what he is told. Hearing this, Croft takes the princess by the hand and says, "Well, so be it," and offers to marry him. Since he likes her very much, and if he has to marry someone, the prince says that if she becomes his empress, he will do everything she asks. The girl asks if he will notarize. Croft asks what she wants to get by assuring this condition. The main character answered that nothing special, just let him promise that they can divorce at any time, and after that, he will be able to provide her with a comfortable and safe life. The surprised prince turns to Riviere and tells her that he has just proposed to her, and asks if she thinks it is strange to talk about divorce in such a situation. The main character claims that His Highness will want a divorce more than her, and she promises that she will leave the prince herself when the time comes, because it will even be beneficial. The surprised prince, hearing this, thinks about what is in the girl's head. Since all these conditions are not natural even without the notarization of the magician, as well as the fact of turning to the magician, Croft realizes that this request is understandable, considering that he is the son of a madman who killed his own wife with his own hands. The prince asks if she will agree to marry him if the agreement is officially confirmed. The young lady agrees with him. Croft is pleased to announce that the wedding ceremony will take place on the same day as the coronation, and he suggests making everything simpler and faster. The main character thought that he was in too much of a hurry because the coronation ceremony would take place in 2 days. The princess claimed that a lot needed to be prepared, at least clothes. Croft offers the girl to choose a date, since he agrees to any day. The princess says that she will talk to the headmaid and then inform him. The Duke claims that if they decide on a date for the ceremony, they will announce it immediately. However, Duke Blanch will be informed in advance. Riviera says, turning to His Highness, that she wishes for her father to be safe too. Because of Guilfred, his mother's second family also died. The blood says that he understands because the princess does not trust him. However, he is not like him. The main character does not understand who the prince means. His Highness, turning to the girl, promises that she and her family will. Lying in bed, the young lady cannot sleep. You think about the prince all the time. In the morning, Riviera asks the maid if the prince is awake. Zeroni replies that he is sitting in his office, and she heard that he did not sleep all night. Hearing this, the main character is very surprised. Riviera came to the prince's office, and at that moment, he became interested in why she came. The young man thought that the lady could have changed her mind during the night. Croft looks at the girl and thinks that he never imagined that he would ever want to marry someone so much, and he will do everything possible to take care of Riviere while she is with him. Her sympathy for the prince is like he can taste her sweetness on his tongue. because Croft always thought that if he fought hard enough, he could achieve anything. However, he doesn't know what to do if the princess Riviera thinks it's because when he proposed, her words about divorce sounded a little harsh. However, this is because he shouldn't love someone before meeting Lillian. The girl thinks that maybe he really likes her. However, the main character cannot justify herself by saying that, according to the plot, Croft will finish her off. The young lady, addressing His Highness, says that she was rude to him because she did not understand the depth of his feelings and upset him, and therefore asks for forgiveness. Hearing this, the Duke did not really get her message, but his face became even sadder. He replied that he understood, because it was not easy to agree to marry someone like him. The main character objects and says that His Highness is very charming. The saddened prince claims that she said about divorce when they are not even married. Riviera tells the prince that she believes that marriage is a union between people who love each other, and she would like everything to be exactly like that in her life. However, they do not know when such love will appear in their lives, and therefore, leaving the possibility for them to part without causing pain. The young lady claims that they only have a temporary alliance to secure her father's support. Croft looked at the princess and thought that this beauty was very wrong, because he only wants Riviere Blanch as her father, and he just finds it funny because he doesn't believe in love. However, love can come to Riviere, because she is a beauty, elegantly kind and infinitely sweet, and if love exists, then all the men of the world should love this girl. Duchess Blanche is a kind-hearted person who could sympathize even with him, so she will definitely be able to feel something called love. The young lady suggests that if one of them has a loved one, the other one will agree to a divorce with a light heart, and in this way they will both be happy, and there will be peace between them, and no one will suffer. Croft agrees with the princess and promises not to harm her and always protect her, and if she agrees to such conditions, he will call Kinsel to assure them. The main character thought with pleasure that everything was decided. However, who would have thought that Croft would agree? The young lady thought that Lillian would soon arrive at the palace. However, after she and the prince fell in love with each other, there would be a happy ending for everyone. The Duke remembers the lady's words and reflects that if such a person does not appear in her life, then this will not happen either. Croft came into the sorceress's room and told her to get up. The magician asked who dared to wake her up. Seeing Captain Kinsel, he asked him if he had gone mad because he decided to play with fire. The Duke explains that Riviere asked to call a magician to certify the contract and asks if he should contact someone else. Seeing the sorceress, the princess thanked her because she came and said that she had a request for. The magician says that she missed her very much. However, the captain told her everything because she decided to magically certify the contract. The sorceress asks with whom the princess made a deal. The young lady replies that, with His Highness. Kinsel asks the lady if she thinks that the captain can deceive her, and suggests to start by casting a spell on him so that the prince would only tell the truth. The captain, turning to the sorceress, says that he hears everything. Riviera says that this is not the case. However, she wants them to promise each other something before their wedding. The sorceress asks if they have decided to make a marriage. Kinsel asks what the most important condition will be, because she can make him die the most painful death if he stops loving her. However, if he makes her cry, he himself will shed bloody tears until he dies. And if the princess suffers because of the captain, he will drown in the gutter. The magician asks whether to formalize all these points at once. Riviera says she just needs to get a few conditions regarding the divorce finalized. Hearing this, the sorceress laughed, and she said that she understood because the princess needed the captain to agree to a divorce at her first word, and she asked whether she wanted 90% of the property to go to her. Hearing this, the Kinsel claims that her love for them is clouding her judgment, and she suggests that the princess wants it all. The Duke explains that if Riviere meets someone she truly loves, they will divorce. Croft claims that he promises not to harm her, and is also obliged to do everything possible to ensure that the princess lives happily and peacefully after the dissolution of the marriage. The prince claims that this is all Kinsel's conditions. The sorceress asks in surprise what kind of nonsense this is, and she does not understand then to assure such obvious conditions. Kinsel suggests that the lady not let the captain deceive her, and that after the divorce all the property goes to the princess. However, the young lady claims that what the prince said is enough for her. Hearing this, the sorceress says that she is so generous, kind, and a little naive. The mage agrees because they both want it. However, she cannot assure words like happiness or peace because their meaning is too vague. Kinsel argues that conditions prohibiting causing any harm should also be taken with particular caution. Hearing this, Croft turns to the sorceress and asks if she thinks that the princess will be able to kill him with her little fists. Kinsel replies that she doesn't think Riviera could wring a chicken's neck. The sorceress asks if the princess wants to make a marriage contract with the captain, according to which, if she falls in love with someone, she will leave him. The magician says that he understands her fear, since this mad dog can betray and harm her. However, no matter what, she needs to ensure her safety. Riviera objects and says that is not the reason, because the prince can find someone he likes, and she wants the prince to have a chance to be with his true love. Kinsel says that she will sign the contract. However, it will come into effect immediately after the magical activation. The sorceress states that since they are not married yet, it will be difficult to confirm the conditions regarding the divorce. She decides to do everything after the wedding ceremony. The magician says that in that case she will go back to sleep, and asks to wake her up on the wedding day because she will launch the celebratory fireworks. The princess turns to the sorceress and says that since she is already awake, she can take part in the coronation that will take place tomorrow. Kinsel, hearing this, laughs and says that she specifically wants to sleep through. Riviera, looking at the prince and seeing his pitiful appearance, says that she is not going to leave him now. Hey! His Highness replies that he trusts her. On the day of the Dianil ceremony, Pesalos asks Lillian if she is worried. He reassures his sister and says that he will visit her. The girl replies that she is still not. Dianil, walking with his sister, thinks if she will be able to win the favor of this man and take the place of the empress. He looks at his sister and thinks that she should get as close as possible to The brother doesn't understand what his father was thinking. However, it is possible that Lillian will cope since she is famous for her beauty. Lady Riviere greeted Lillian with joy. The main character offers her maid of honor to feel at home, and looking at her, the princess thinks that she is very worried. The main character looks at Lillian and thinks that she will make a man out of Croft and give him to Dianil asks his sister if she will introduce him to the princess. Lillian introduces her brother to the princess. Dianil thanks the main character for welcoming Lillian so warmly, because he is touched by Riviera's kindness. The princess asks Lillian if she should leave them so they can say goodbye in peace. The surprised girl asks her brother if he wanted to tell her anything. Dianil says that he will visit her often, but now he must return. He turns to the Duchess and says that he is glad to meet her. However, he asks her to be kind to his. The main character offers her lady-in-waiting to show her chambers and unpack her luggage, because then she will introduce Lillian to the prince. Riviera understands that the girl is clearly scared. However, there are many bad rumors about Croft that may. The princess reports that the prince can be quite harsh at times, but despite this, he is a very good person. In the evening, sitting at the table, the Duke, seeing the ladies, thought that there was another uninvited guest. The princess introduced His Highness to Lady Lillian Ilmenda, who had come to the palace to become her maid of honor. Lillian says that it is a great honor for her to meet His Highness. The main character, seeing that the Duke does not do what she taught him, thought that he is an asshole because she spent a lot of time on him. Riviera prompts the Duke to kiss her hand, and at that moment, he kisses her hand. The princess reports that His Highness should invite the lady-in-waiting to the palace. The main character speaks very quietly and warns that if he is not more polite with Lillian, she will neither dine nor dance with him. However, the princess reminds him that she is still his etiquette teacher. Sitting at the dinner table, the main character thought that something was wrong here, and she asked why it was so quiet here, like in a swamp. The main character realizes that in the original novel, despite the social difference between them, there was no spark at first sight. Riviera doesn't understand where she went wrong as her plan falls apart. Seeing the saddened princess, Croft asks her if she liked the food. The main character thought that he should ask this, not her. The princess asks Lillian if she likes the dishes. Suddenly, the lady-in-waiting looks at the prince and thinks that Duke Pesalos was the coldest man she had ever met. Riviera asks the girl if she is okay. Lillian apologizes and leaves the room. The prince says that she has terrible manners. However, the main character remembers that the first impression Lillian made on Croft should have been good. The Duke suggests that the princess sit down because the food is getting cold. The main character, turning to His Highness, says that it seems to me that something is wrong with Lillian. The prince says that it doesn't matter, as long as she gets along well with her lady-in-waiting. Croft turns to Riviere and tells her to listen to him because she has eaten practically nothing. Hearing this, the main character is very surprised, because I showed her that Lillian did not hook him in, and the princess suggests to His Highness that if he wants to follow Lillian, she will not be against it. Croft says that even if they call him a mad dog, he will not chase the girl to finish her off for not observing table etiquette. The surprised lady says that she didn't quite mean it that way. The prince replies that there is no need for that now. The main character objects, because that should never be done. And the prince agrees. Riviera asks if Lillian hasn't become nervous because of his cold attitude towards her. She suggests that the prince should be more friendly. Since she taught him how to greet ladies, she asks. Croft replies that this is how one greets ladies who are welcome, and asks if he has not learned her lesson well. And he says that he is not happy with Lillian. The princess, thinking that she is the love of his life, says that Lillian is his guest, and he should have been more friendly. Herzog replies that he has no reason for this, and he was polite in allowing Pesolos's niece to remain in the palace. The main character wanted to object, but in the original, Lillian received an order from the Duke to continue seeing Croft, despite being afraid of him. However, it was on her uncle's orders that she came to the palace as a maid of. The novel was sad because two enemies who could not be together fell in love with each other. So Lillian's reaction is understandable. But as soon as they met, a spark ignited between them, and they fell in love. In the original, Croft went crazy every time he saw Lillian, and the main character thought that something went wrong here. Because the look always reveals people's feelings. The Duke says that he is glad to see only her Riviere, and asks if they will dance this evening. Suddenly, the main character realized that the reason was in her. Worried Lillian, in her room, thinks about how she must please the prince and become empress. She does not understand why she should marry someone who can kill with one look. And especially since he has already given him. Suddenly, the head maid enters the maid's room and says that she heard the girl leave the table during dinner. The maid asks if the Duke is angry when he learns about this. Lillian realizes that there are already people in the palace who are watching her. The maid claims that the Duke told her to think about her family, and she will not talk about what happened today, and suggests that the lady try not to disappoint the master in the future. Lillian was worried and thought that she had nowhere to run. Riviera heard that they were to be married in 10 days. The young lady did not understand how it was possible to organize an imperial wedding in such a short time. Zeroni reports that His Highness said that the ceremony could be simple, so 10 days would be enough to prepare. The main character thought that she just wanted to quickly seal the marriage terms before Croft fell in love with Lillian. And it seems to her that everything is going according. The maid says that she heard that the room for the dance rehearsal is ready, and asks the mistress what she is doing. Riviera replies that she doesn't know if it's a good time to dance, because she can't even imagine dancing in this situation. The princess asks the maid how Lillian is feeling. Zeroni answers that the lady has not left her. The surprised main character asks if the maid of honor has eaten properly, and says that she will instruct the maids to take care of her. The maid claims that the mistress is incredibly kind. Seeing the princess, Croft asks if she heard that the wedding is in 10 days. The young lady asks if there is such a hurry, and suggests postponing it to a later date. Hearing this, the Duke objects, because there is no need for this and there is not enough time. The princess thought about it and said that it would be possible to do it in just over a week. Croft thinks that she doesn't even know how much he's looking forward to this wedding, and she doesn't even know how much he likes her. He's even willing to divorce her if she meets someone she loves. The prince would give anything to kiss those lips. However, if she felt the same as he did. The Duke, turning to Riviere, says that he wants to kiss her, but the main character objects to him. However, he offers her to dance. Riviera thought that it was Lillian who should take his hand and not her. The main character was only looking for a way to survive, not how to rewrite the original from beginning to end. She doesn't even know if she can accept Croft's love, which is like a bomb. However, the main character doesn't want to become. The place of the real Riviere is absolutely not suitable for such an insignificant person as her. Since the main character cannot accept Croft's feelings, she must give up this. The princess thinks that she feels sorry for the Duke because she is the first one who could sympathize with him. Croft asks the lady if she was angry because he wanted to kiss her. The princess objects and says that he is. The princess understands that she did not want to see the sad prince with an empty, outstretched hand. However, she said that she was not angry with him and accepted the offer for how much. The main character thinks about whether he will suddenly press her harder and bury his face in her neck. Then she will run away. However, for now, the situation is late in the evening. The prince heard his name being called, and when he came to the main hall, he saw Duke Pesalos, who informed the prince that they had not seen each other for a long time. Ergertsorg says he can call him by his first name for now, and he's thrilled to finally see Croft grow up. The prince agrees with him and says that they really haven't seen each other for a long time. Uncle says that since childhood Croft resembled his father, and now it seems to him that the late emperor is sitting before him. Croft listens to the Duke and feels a threat in his words. Pesalos claims that he has the same face as the man who killed his mother. And now he sits where he sat. Croft thought it would be easier to start a conflict right away, and he asks his uncle if he came here to die. The uncle replies that he is here for him, his nephew, and asks if he wishes to restore the honor of the late Queen Letizia. A surprised Croft reveals that he never expected to hear his mother's name from him, as only rage and a thirst for a place kept him afloat. Croft was in the East. He got all the information he could and tried to investigate the circumstances of his mother's death. But no matter what he did or who he contacted, Pesalos looked at his nephew and thought that if he had the chance, he would finish him off right now. However, the uncle reports that he recently received evidence that would restore Letitia's good name. Croft replies that he does not need any proof. The Pesalos claim that without it, no one will believe him. The prince replies that anyone will believe the emperor's statement. However, the captain ponders whether there was evidence against his mother in the past, since the emperor's suspicion alone was enough to finish off the first woman of the empire, since he does not need evidence to take revenge. Since Guilfred is already dead, it will be enough for Croft to cut the throat of the person sitting in front of him. However, will this be enough for his mother, who has never been justified in the eyes of people? Pesalos says that he is not in the same position as his father was, and asks if high society will believe him without proof. The prince, claiming that he is not going to negotiate anything with him, because the point of politics is to go to what you want, even if you don't like the path. The uncle says that the nephew forgets that, having become a ruler, he will be responsible for other people, and their lives will depend on him. He gives an example of how precious his Duchess Blanch, who in 10 days will become his wife. Croft asks his uncle that his visit here is definitely not an elegant way to commit suicide. Pesalos says his life is also in Croft's hands, but if he dies today, his mother will always be remembered as a wicked empress, and his beloved Rivière Blanche and those she loves will never be safe. The prince tells his uncle to say what he wants. Pesalos says to make Lillian a concubine and leave her in the palace, and that is all. Croft says he doesn't know what his uncle is hoping for, but it won't happen. Pesalos reports that everyone in the capital already knows that he is crazy about Duchess Blanche, and the uncle suggests to rein in the princess's father, who imagines himself to be God knows who. Uncle says that when he arranges for Lillian, he will send him evidence that will help justify his mother. Blake suggests that the prince finish off his uncle, and if he just says so, Pesalos won't even have time to take 2 steps on the street, because Rivière has dear and beloved people, and the prince is sure that he can protect her, but he won't be able to protect the rest, even if he introduces his squad to them. Croft says that as soon as he becomes emperor, he will cut off his limbs and then strangle him. For 17 years, the prince dreamed of a place. He understands that nothing terrible will happen if he waits a little longer. Chester asks His Highness what to do with Pesalos's niece, and how to explain this to the Duchess. Malik suggests saying that the Duke threatened the prince into making her his concubine, but Croft disagrees because Rivière doesn't need to know about this, like many other things. During the meeting after the visit to Duke Pesalos, it was decided to talk about everything frankly, because it is the right decision, but they are not that close. When the princess entered the hall, she greeted the gentleman and said that today was a particularly good morning, but he was so gloomy. and he asked what had happened. The prince announces that he has decided to make Lillian Ilmenda his concubine. Hearing this, the main character says that it is a wonderful idea, and thinks that, of course, the original plot could not have changed so easily. Riviera says she knew this would happen from the moment she first saw Lady Lillian, and claims it was a wonderful decision. The prince reflects on the fact that the lady does not love him, and he was still mistaken in thinking that they had become close. Croft felt as if his heart had stopped beating. The main character noticed that something was wrong, and asked if His Highness was okay. The prince replies that he is not well. Riviera suddenly notices that his face looks as if he is about to cry. The lady thinks that something hurts him. The princess asks whether to call the palace doctor or Kinsel. The lady comes closer to the duke, and Croft asks her if she is worried about him. The lady replies that she is worried, and asks her to tell him what hurts. I heard this. The duke says that in that case he is fine, and he takes the lady's chopping block and kisses it. The prince claims that, whatever the case, she is his empress, and therefore everything is fine. The main character thinks that even though Croft was able to love Lillian, he still treats her in a special way. Zeroni asks the lady if she had quarreled with His Highness. The lady asks why this should happen. The maid says that her face is horrified, and therefore she thought that something had happened. The princess says that on the contrary, something good happened, because Croft fell in love with Lillian as in the original, but she cannot tell the maid about it. Looking at herself in the mirror, the princess remembered what Zeroni had said about her not looking well. However, she was in a wonderful mood right now. The main character reflects on the fact that if Lillian becomes a concubine, she will not have to worry about Croft harming her and think about an escape plan. Later, when Riviera leaves the palace, the maid of honor will naturally become the empress. And then the relationship with Pesalos will improve, since his niece will be the empress. Croft will not. The princess realizes that, based on the behavior she has seen, the prince will treat Lillian well, and she will love him just like in the original novel. And it will be a happy ending, where everyone will be happy. However, the main character thought that for some reason she was not happy. She realized that she should talk to Lillian in advance, because suddenly she would be embarrassed by such a sudden offer to become a concubine, and she might. Riviera asks the maid if the lady is going to her chambers now. Zeroni says that she is meeting the duke's son in the drawing room, and the duke has sent her a whole bunch of gifts. Surprised, Lillian asks Dionil if it is true that the prince wants to make her a concubine. The aristocrat replies that her father has told her all sorts of things again, and that she should not worry, because she will soon become empress, since her father has high hopes for her. Dionil suggests winning the prince's heart and not worrying about The worried lady-in-waiting says that she does not want to be a ruler, because the prince is so scary. However, the brother claims that she will become the noblest lady of the Leuven Empire. He asks if it is possible to say such nonsense when so many people are doing everything for her. The brother suggests that people hurry up so as not to be late for the coronation. Dionil says that all these jewels from his father will make Lillian the most beautiful of any girl from the Blanch family. The temple was filled with the singing of the choir of bishops from the holy city of Linton Garden. Before the eyes of people pursuing their own goals, he became the 17th ruler of the Leuven Empire. The emperor, addressing his subjects, says that they all know for sure that he grew up in the East, because everything there is arranged so that you give twice as much as you receive. However, he may become wild, but he will be a fair ruler. Croft says that loyalty will be rewarded, and for the spilled blood of others, you will have to answer with your own. And this applies to everyone without exception. The aristocrats greeted the emperor and cried out, "Long live His Majesty the Emperor Louvain." Croft thought that if his mother were alive, she would be happier than anyone else, because he was able to achieve this. The main character thought that today was truly a very happy day, and she wanted to share this joy with the emperor. The emperor approaches Riviere and tells her that she is his empress. The lady thought that since she has not yet married him, and if Lillian sees this, she will misunderstand. Riviera understands that she cannot reject his hand and disgrace him in front of everyone. However, the emperor takes the lady by the hand, and she says that she is not yet the empress, but is already walking with him. Croft claims that he does not see any. Riviera muses that he would probably like to hold Lillian's hand right now. But judging by the way he shows respect for her, Despite his feelings for the lady-in-waiting, he will treat his future emperor. When the emperor went away to pay his respects to the guests, and at that time, Riviere saw her father, Blanche tells her daughter that the emperor is going to make Pesolos's niece his concubine. The daughter asks how her father found out about this. Blanche tells Riviera not to worry because the emperor loves only her. Father says it's obvious that Duke Pesolos just decided to discipline their family. Since the emperor loves only her, everything is fine, and this is what will save their family. Blanche says that she is too generous to the new ruler, but he will still talk to him. The main character realized that her father is concerned about political ambitions, not his daughter. Riviera objects to her father and says that this should not be done. Blanche calms her daughter and says no matter how influential Pesalos is, the emperor will always be grateful to. Pesalos enters the room and says that he has come to greet them away from the crowd. And he feels as if he has interrupted the conversation between father and daughter. The Duke says that thanks to Blanche, the emperor was able to take the throne. And as his uncle, the Duke of the Empire, the main character wondered if he had come to thank them. However, Croft would quickly fall in love with Lillian, and so she thought that she and Pesalos would soon make peace. But apparently, it was. Blanche reports that each of them has benefited. Since his nephew has become emperor, his daughter will soon become empress. Uncle claims that the new emperor is very similar to his late predecessor, because they are similar not only in appearance, but also in character. Pesalos asks if Croft will do the same as his father in the future, and if he were in his place, he would worry about his daughter's fate.